Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, September 17th, and it's 1 p.m., and it's time for the Commissioner's Work Session. And up first, we have the Vision 2050 update. Cara and Suzanne are here in one piece, luckily. And Carrie, take it away.
Sure. Sorry. Good afternoon. So, Cara Silbernagel, Deputy County Manager. Suzanne Wolf.
Community Development Director.
Okay. And we've got a team behind us as well. So, thank you, Spud.
Welcome back, Cara.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see.
Nice to see you.
It's good to be back. Thank you all. Thank you for your support. So we are here today to give an update on Pickens County Vision 2050. Last time we were in front of the board was, I think we discovered April. And so there's a lot that's been happening and a lot that's moving now. And so we are excited to give an update and welcome kind of any questions or feedback along the way and at the end from board members. Okay, so for today, we're going to give an update overall on the project, give a review of some of the data studies and research that we have going on, as well as some of the public process and community education about the Growth Committee recommendations that we have going, focus groups getting started, and an update on the work group. And I'm going to keep going, and an update on the comp plan. So we've got a lot to cover and are excited to share with you all. So you all have seen this again before. Hopefully it's nearly as memorized for all of you as it is for us, but for the public and others is what is Vision 2050? It's implementing bold climate action while balancing our economy, preserving our rural and wild lands, and supporting an equitable and affordable community. That is the overarching vision statement for Vision 2050. It's to meet the BoCC goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2050, residential net zero by 2030, all while maintaining and creating a healthy level of economic vitality. So really, Vision 2050 is about taking those growth committee recommendations and the interconnectedness of them and looking at what is the vision that we all want to see for Pickens County in 2050 as a community, as well as with those climate goals that you all have set. And then we've evolved what used to be the growth committee into the Vision 2050 work group, and we've had most folks are still very engaged and very interested and committed to seeing this process through. And then we have also added, because now we're in kind of comp plan and we'll be working on code aspects along the way, we've also added representatives from caucuses into that work group, and we've got
I think we have 7 caucuses represented now.
7 caucuses represented.
Working on the last few.
Yeah, so, which is great. Next slide.
Yep.
So just what is this process? Just, you know, we're taking on a lot. It is a comprehensive plan update, it's a building and energy code update, and it's a land use code update. Most communities do those separately, and we are lumping all of these together, which really is also listening to the recommendations of the growth committee of all the suite of recommendations is interplaying within all of those different pieces. And so to do that, we've come up with a kind of a framework of how we are looking at this process and kind of 4 key steps, which last time we were in front of you was about setting the stage. We really wanted to make sure those community values, that vision statement that we read up front, was bought in not just from the growth committee representatives, but from BoCC, from P&Z, as well as the community at large. So you all confirmed those values, P&Z confirmed those values in April, and then that's some of what we'll go through today of the community surveys that we're asking about as well. So that's kind of setting the stage. A lot of this summer has been about, you know, under that building the recommendations, so starting to work at the data analysis and some of those technical reviews in order to inform those code changes. And then the third element that we're starting to work on, and you'll see more of this later today, is in the updating the guiding policy, starting to work on that comprehensive plan update.
I took the energy code survey.
Oh, thank you.
But in order to take the energy code survey.
Mike.
That's your mic.
But in order to take the energy code survey,
Mhm.
I had to keep going somewhere else and learning, as like probably took me an hour and a half to read about the HERS thing and continuous installation and all of that. I mean, it's really technical for just the average person.
And we'll get in of kind of how we're looking at engagement around kind of the broader community piece for the average person, and then also wanting to hear from those technical experts, the folks that are living it day to day, to be part of this process as well. And then the last piece is adopting the code, and we'll get there, but we're not there yet.
I have a quick question. On the AIS first statement, it says 2025 plan.
Yeah, I saw that.
2050.
2050.
I was just wondering if we were starting the process in 25 to get to 50. Okay. I read it carefully.
Thank you.
I'll take account for that one. That might have been a.
Oh, no, no.
We're between the two of us. We missed that.
Yes.
Wishful thinking.
Yes.
Gonna be done
Pretty
next
sure
year.
not too many other people. I saw it too, but I'll bet you maybe 2 other people in the county saw it.
We have to throw a little test in
Yeah,
for you every
yeah,
time.
yeah.
right?
They do that just to make sure we read it and then know we read it.
Yeah, I think they're traps for us.
So just a quick update in the first of setting the stage. As I mentioned, we in the spring confirmed these community values as the guiding principles for this process with you all, with the P&Z, and with the work group. And then the next step was to be doing that with the community. And so that's the community survey. Hopefully you've seen some folks canvassing out front. I don't know the full count. I think I heard maybe 40 or 50 folks have taken it so far. We're leaving it open through October. But really are encouraging as many folks to take it. And it's really just to be a quick snapshot of, what is the one word that describes Pitkin County, or the Pitkin County that you want to see in 2050. And this is a word cloud of some of the different things that we've heard from folks. I think what's really strikes out, there's some fun words in here, as always with word clouds. But I think what really comes out is continued words that we heard from the growth committee is a lot of that balanced community, right? Of just wanting to make it livable, affordable, and really how do we balance all the different tensions that we're all feeling as we think for 30 years ahead.
And what was your sample size for the word cloud?
I think right now it's about 40.
Okay,
And
I was
so-
thinking, well, there's about 40 words, so mayhem there was one mayhem
Yeah.
sponsor in there.
The latest update is living in commune. Which we don't know.
What?
Live in a common, live in a commune?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the most recent,
Yeah.
got it, okay.
But we will have the survey open for another month, so encourage anyone to continue to take it, and we'll be back with more as we hear. So then the next is building the recommendations, the hard work, and I'm going to hand it to Suzanne to actually talk about.
Okay, here's what we've got going on, which as we start to put it all in paper, we were like, we have a lot going on this project, which isn't a surprise. But so we have a number of data studies underway currently. One is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Inventory Update. So that's updating the last one from 2019-20, and that will be used, obviously related to those growth committee recommendations, to measure the impacts of those recommendations. Under housing and employment generation rates, we're updating the employment generation rate, which is an input into the employee housing impact fee. We're not looking at changes to the way it is calculated, but this is one of the inputs, and we haven't updated that since
2003?
early 2000s, to look at the construction employment generation and the post-construction employment generation related to residential development. So this is looking at updating that information to have a more accurate number that plugs into the housing impact fee.
Francie,
I just got an email from somebody that had the percentage numbers in it. And it was that, I think it's 25% of the vehicle traffic is for houses over 5750, which only represent 15% of the county, and it had other things around that, but that was basically the main takeaway from what I just got from somebody. It was mostly in reference to the airport, but, so that was the cars that are coming up Valley. That was pretty interesting.
We're hoping to get at that as well.
Yeah.
So the other study that's underway relates to floor area net parcel. One of the recommendations from the growth committee was to look at having a floor area ratio or some sort of sliding scale countywide. Right now, we have that for most of the urban growth boundary zone districts. Red Mountain R30 has a ratio. A lot of the county doesn't. So it's looking at trying to right size a house size. Right now, AR10 5750, whether you're, half an acre or you're 10 acres. So it's, kind of looking at that, what the impact would be. And the net parcel is, are there constraints like a slope reduction that should be considered in terms of determining, your lot area to then calculate an allowable floor area. So it's digging into that recommendation a bit to sort of look at different scenarios and what that might look like.
Right.
Patty?
My concern would be you have a 300-acre parcel. Yeah, I mean, I know the floor area ratio when it comes to smaller parcels in the urban boundary, but when you get out into the rural, you've got some pretty large parcels, so you have to make sure that door isn't open to, oh, well, my floor area ratio said I could have a 50,000 square foot house.
They still got that cap.
All right, I just
No
want to
matter
make
what,
sure that we're,
there's still a cap, whether it's the 9250 or the caucus
Yeah.
areas or the overlay areas
yeah,
with
see,
different
I'm not sure how
limits.
that
So
floor area ratio is going to fit, but I think it's something we need to at least,
It's kind of
Similar-
double rewarding the wealthy.
That's similar.
If you can buy a big piece of property, then you can also build a big house.
only to this house size.
Sorry, Carl.
I was just gonna say, I think that similar concern is where you start to see in the growth committee recommendations, there's multiple levels, because that exact same concern was, okay, well, that's where we want 8750 in the rural areas, and so that's where they start to stack on some other pieces as well. I won't get into it all, but your concerns were theirs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, continuing on. Underway, looking at the TDR and growth management programs. Obviously out of the growth committee report, as well as we've heard it from you all and the P&Z along the way. Also, how can we use these programs to better reflect the county's values and help achieve the desired quality of life outcomes? So this is these two bullets don't encompass all of the things we're looking at, but the first talking about evaluating keeping growth management competition as a tool for pacing new subdivisions and development, but removing the competition for additional floor area. If you remember, the growth committee report talked a lot about a separate system to deal with how you would deal with additional floor area when you already have a base development right. This sort of goes back to where growth management started, which was when you're subdividing or creating new 35-acre parcels, you're needing to acquire a development right, and that the competition system would still exist for that in that realm. But there would be something, it would look different, and we don't know what different is yet for that additional floor area. And that's when we start to talk about tiering and, lots of different pieces of the growth committee report. And then changes for TDR sending and receiving sites, maintain the TDR market. Also, I think maintain the value, you heard from the growth committee, the value of protection of rural remote via TDR is critical and has served us well in the county. And so not doing anything to harm that, but then looking at how we can better use the sending sites, the receiving sites, how to better manage that. And again, we've certainly heard a lot of it from you over the years with hearing different applications and whatnot, and the use of those TDR sending and receiving sites. So we're finally digging into that
Right.
to put
And
some.
and there's much more to it than this. These are
There's much more
right,
to the
abbreviations.
task order that's behind this. That's a very brief
Got it.
snapshot, I guess, of.
Kelly and then Patty.
Yeah, I wanted to hone in on that a little bit because I don't think that this sentence fully reflects like the entire scope of opportunity on that conversation. You know, I think some of the other things to talk about are, you know, how do we incentivize sort of poor sites for that are going after TDRs? How, you know, what other possible uses are there for TDRs? And I guess just want to make sure that this is much broader in scope than is demonstrated here in this sentence.
It's definitely much broader. And again, thinking back to the recommendation report from the Growth Committee, you know, I think there were at least 2 to 3 pages worth of their recommendations were specific to growth management and TDRs. So, you know, again, we're trying to start to plug all of those in and you know, sort of parse out how to look at all of that. And this is a piece towards that end. So yes, there's definitely a lot more to it than.
So subdivisions, how many subdivisions have we seen in the last 5 years?
Very few. I don't
We
have a
have
number
very
off the top
few and
of my
very
head.
few opportunities. I know, because I remember the first time one came through, we were like, subdivision? What are we doing with a subdivision? So, yeah, so I know that we're really limited in that, but we have to be prepared just in case.
Can I just want to say these 2 bullets. I know there's a lot more to them, but somehow I think you need to allude to that because if we just say we're evaluating changes to TDR to better manage impacts of additional intensity in developed areas, you implied that it would also, we're still looking at protecting rural areas as well, but not saying it in this sentence could actually give people the wrong idea, in my opinion. When I looked at it, I thought, whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing here? So I appreciate your desire to be brief, but I don't want to leave anything out. I think as Kelly inferred, is that we want to make sure that you know, we haven't changed the focus or forgotten something. And so good luck writing a short sentence and being all inclusive.
It's hard to put it on one slide for you.
But I think that to your concerns, what this is evaluating the changes as the Growth Committee recommended them to the TDR system, which
Right, okay.
it is very comprehensive.
Anybody watching on Grassroots with the sound off would interpret this differently.
Yeah.
So turn up your sound.
Okay.
Thank you.
Additional studies that we're getting basically ready to kick off are basically bringing in more data behind all of these. So, Francie, to your point, baseline of intensity of traffic on county roads, you know, analyzing where the cars are going. The economic analysis measuring the residential economy. Climate intensity, some case studies and analysis of performance and development standards that are used in other communities. Again, all of this coming out of the Growth Committee report. Those case studies, you know, looking at how can we have different standards in the building code as well as the land use code to forward some of our climate goals. And then some work on water planning and analysis to help guide some of the work in the comprehensive plan and the policies related to water in the county.
These aren't in any sort of hierarchical order, because I'd put water, every time I read this in the packet, it's like, I'd like to put water at the top of the list everywhere, only because that just seems like
It's definitely there.
a finite resource that we should put before, you know, at the beginning of every conversation. Kelly?
Does that include groundwater analysis?
We all turn to.
We're going to turn to.
Yeah, I can speak to a portion of that. That will include some evaluation of the current groundwater studies that the Pitkin County has already done, as well as including kind of what's the broader policy direction from groundwater moving forward. So the one outcome may be that there's additional groundwater studies that we would like to perform, but we're going forward with what we have done to date and looking at best practices from other counties of what they've done. I would just say there's a lot of work on the groundwater space in terms of water adequacy that gives us a lot more tools than we have used to date. So that's that's a big focus. And when we, had communicated before about the water piece, the groundwater is definitely, we hear that, and definitely that's a component to that water planning aspect.
Great, thank you.
Can I just real quick, do we still have under subdivisions the requirement that they have to show wet water with subdivision approvals?
That conceptual.
Because I remember we changed that down Mid-Valley, like Hoagland Ranch maybe even, when we did that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
You
Continue
keep
on.
going.
Okay.
We could drill down on any point, but I'm biting my tongue.
You will see
I
all
want you
of
to get
these
through
in
this.
much more detail.
Yeah.
So I guess continuing in our building the recommendations, we're also working on engagement with the public. Here are just some of the opportunities that we have. We have the web page for Vision 2050 up and running. Newsletter, we're asking people to sign up for the newsletter. You can do that on the web page as well. We already mentioned the values survey through the end of September. We're starting on some of our targeted engagement with the focus groups. The work group, as we've already mentioned, has met and will be meeting regularly. The P&Z comp plan, unfortunately, we just found out we don't have a quorum for tonight, but we will be, we'll get that on their agenda in a couple of weeks, so we'll be moving on that. And then community education, we are pulling together a community open house, October 30th, related specifically to the comp plan. We can talk more about that, sort of presence at community events. We're happy to have people go out and talk to different groups. If you all have ideas on places to go and people for us to talk to, let us know. So again, just definitely starting that outreach to the community and wanting to make sure people are informed and educated.
Are you reaching out to the newspapers and the public radio and advertising
Yep.
even? Just to, how do we intrigue people to,
Yep.
come help us look at the next 30 years?
We have a couple, and in fact, Abby was reaching out to one of the newspapers is interested in maybe doing a little bit more detailed story on it. So
Great.
So yes.
It seems like we're all so busy. Those reminders in the paper, are everywhere. Reminders everywhere help.
yes, absolutely.
And this just sort of a reminder, you've seen this before, the work group we've spoken about, the former growth committee members, including caucus representatives, to provide feedback and guidance to staff as the comp plan and codes are developed. Focus groups are going to be doing a deeper dive, so experts in certain topics and community stakeholders to look into the research, key findings, or code language to also help guide us in the process. And then again, community at-large outreach. And we'll talk some more about some of those focus groups that are coming up. Open surveys, we've talked about the values survey, and Francie mentioned she had taken the energy code survey.
And the values.
Okay, perfect.
But it was a lot easier than the
Yes.
That one word choice was a
Yeah.
little easier than, so the energy code survey, Jeff will be bringing through amendments for the energy code this year, before the end of the year, to you all as an intermediate step toward that goal of residential net zero by 2030. So the survey and the focus group that he's holding tomorrow are all gathering input from the public about what that approach is going to look like, how to best move that forward towards that goal, and how to inform those code amendments that will be coming to you. So more to come on that front. And then the focus groups, as mentioned, the energy code is tomorrow. We've set up one, again, we have that data study underway about floor area ratio net parcel. So we'll be meeting with a focus group on that in October 16th. And then the TDR growth management work that's going on, we'll be meeting with a focus group November 18th. So those are all starting to come together.
Great.
And reconvene the work group. I think we've talked a little bit about that meeting on the September 4th. We had 26 people join in, which I thought was great to see that many of the growth committee folks still engaged.
How many
and
did we have on that committee?
It was 20. It was
I was gonna
26.
say.
So this 26 included members of the caucuses.
Okay,
So and
I was gonna say, that number sounds familiar.
like Doug Throm is now on the P and Z, so he wasn't showing up with the work group, but and Jessica and Jessica. But even since that meeting, we've had a few more caucus representatives say that they will participate. So anyway, just feeling that that's a great.
Is Sierra Flanagan involved in the work group now?
Did she join in on the?
Yeah,
I think
she
she was.
I
on
hope
the-
so. I'll
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
her tonight at our caucus picnic, and I'll twist her arm if she's not signed up for that.
She's been on it. I think she was on the last one.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
She was in Santa Fe for a while, but now she's back here, so.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm going to hand off to Hannah Hunt. Are you going to jump in on our next step that we're working on is updating guiding policy, and that's obviously the conversation about the comp plan. So
I'm
Ellen
happy
and
to.
Hannah Hunt are going to run through these slides. So
Sure. Ellen, do you want to?
Yeah,
come join.
You can
Here's
use
the
this.
Have
seat.
a mic
There's one
over here.
Oh, there's one too, yeah.
Thank you. Right, so adoption of the comp plan update is the first step in the Vision 2050 process to support, really lay the foundation for the implementation of code amendments and other broad county programs and policies. So the long range, the comp plan is a long range document that it guides policy direction it has several functions. It guides policy direction to achieve core community values and goals. And as you know, it provides land use and administrative policy direction to guide land use code amendments direction. But it also guides other community programs and policies, including policies around transportation, the natural environment, the local economy, community well-being, and regional collaboration. Those are a few of the other countywide topics that the comp plan addresses. So next slide. Thank you. So this slide just looks at the roadmap for the comprehensive plan work ahead, and really it's looking at the timeline. And so April through August of '24, spring and summer, we've been working on the existing conditions portion of the comprehensive plan. And really if you could skip ahead to two slides. The existing conditions really establishes a community baseline. It establishes where we are now, so we can use that as a baseline for moving forward, where we want to go. And it includes a county plan inventory. There are several existing plans that have been developed through the county organization. And those are fairly recent planning documents that will be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. And also the existing conditions looks at the county's social, demographic, economic, and geographic conditions, and provides future projections to establish a strong qualitative and quantitative foundation to build upon. In addition, as part of the existing conditions work, I think Suzanne alluded to the fact that there was a community values survey, and that's been done, and that also helps inform existing conditions. So then back to the timeline slide. Thanks. Sorry to bounce back and forth.
That's not back. How do I go back?
I can just.
Oh, is that screen actually work?
Oh, I didn't know.
That's all right. I can walk through it.
Mine-
So,
mine doesn't.
so sorry to get things completely,
Going back?
yeah.
Now that I know how to go back.
So on the roadmap or the timeline, the next step, actually, we've begun the next step, which is the topic area groundwork. And this is really looking at the plan elements, the chapters in the plan. And Hannah Hunt's going to walk us through what those plan elements and chapters are in a few slides forward. But basically, we're going to be gathering community feedback on those plan area elements, and we'll have we'll bring in some subject matter experts on some of those specific topic areas, and then, as Suzanne also mentioned, we've got a community workshop scheduled on October 30th to really get more community feedback on those elements and policy sections that will be included in the comprehensive plan. That's going to take us through October, and then from October through January of 2025, we'll be refining that policy direction based on what we've gathered in that topic area groundwork period, feedback from the community, and data that we've gathered to help refine that policy direction. We'll have another work group meeting in November. We've got a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting scheduled to follow the work group meeting to take a look at the policy direction that we've established at that point. Hannah Hunt and I will be putting together the first draft of the comprehensive plan between January and March of 2025, based on all of the community input and data that we've received at that point. And then we'll be coming back, hoping to have a final draft of the comprehensive plan. We'll be working on it between March and with the hope of having a final draft adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission with input from the work group by June of 2025. So that's the timeline we're looking at. Hopefully we'll be able to stay focused on that timeline and achieve our goal of a final adoption June 2025.
Since we are not directly involved in the comp plan update, what do you think is the best opportunities for us as individual board members or as a board collectively to provide input?
Well, I think that one way we anticipate getting feedback from you is coming to you if there are any key policy areas that we think are going to be moving forward that will be of interest to you. We don't have any dates scheduled right now for coming to you with those topic areas or policy directives yet, but we will plan on scheduling those meetings as those touch points become evident.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, I would also say we did confer with Rye and also welcome board members to come to those community open houses, whether just to observe and hear what the conversation is and flag something that we need to bring back to all of you or to participate in them. But you said that absolutely is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
So then, I think the next slide is just, really this is looking at the basics of a comprehensive plan, what it is, why we have one. I think, as you know, the comprehensive plan is something that we are mandated by the state to develop to guide countywide policy direction for growth and development and to achieve community vision and values. And why our current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2003, and a lot has happened since 2003. So an update is necessary to achieve several objectives. One, to incorporate the suite of community growth advisory committee recommendations, to address state requirements that have recently been updated, and to establish the policy basis for the land use and building energy code updates, as I said earlier, as a first step to achieve the Vision 2050 goals. And then how, just to reiterate, the community growth advisory recommendations really are serving as a foundation for the values and policy direction. But the comp plan will also include topics such as public facilities, beyond land use, including public facilities, natural resources, tourism, recreation, hazard mitigation, and emergency management, et cetera. So it will be a broad-reaching document that covers really a broad countywide perspective on several topics. And Suzanne alluded to the fact that the work group that is still working with us includes the community growth advisory, several of the community growth advisory individuals will be working with us to guide staff and be a liaison to the community at the same time. And as you know, the P&Z is going to formally adopt the plan. We already covered that slide, and with this slide, I'm going to hand it over to Hannah Hunt, who's going to walk through those plan elements, which really are the chapters that we will have in the comprehensive plan, and then the policy elements that will be included within each of those elements.
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, I'm Hannah Hunt, part of the long range team. So as we're shaping out the comprehensive plan, what's informing this plan is both an inventory of our current plans in existing conditions, which is a county profile that touched on those different socioeconomic, demographic, et cetera information. That information material was presented to the work group at the meeting on September 4th. That's available on the Pitkin County, on the Vision 2050 website as kind of a resource of what was presented there, that kind of dossier of information. But what's here on the screen is what we're looking at in terms of the structure of the plan and the scope of what will be included. And this is coming from both APA best practices in terms of making sure we have good coverage on topic areas, as well as there's a variety of state requirements that we need to include in the comprehensive plan that are requirements that were not a part of the last comprehensive plan because they didn't exist at that time. So water aspects, I know that's an important issue. There's certainly a water supply component that is required to be a part of that, and we're following through that protocol, for example. But I'll walk through these, or
Just wanted to ask you, bold versus not bold.
Right.
Bold versus not bold, yeah. So the areas that are in bold are where we have a really clear, or we have a existing county planning document that really sets a pretty direct direction. So for example, just last year, the hazard mitigation plan was updated, road and bridge maintenance plan was updated, there was a wildfire protection plan, all in 2023. So the comprehensive plan is going to be acknowledging and supporting the policy direction that has been established in those adopted plans, as an example.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so those 5 elements, so the built environment, which is what we kind of traditionally think of with comprehensive plans, that's really looking at the land use and establishing land use direction, but also getting at aspects related to climate action in the built environment, transportation and mobility, really connected to Pitkin County's role, public facilities, historic resources, waste management, renewable energy, and some questions around renewable energy siting, as well as utilities. Then the natural environment, which is focused really on kind of the natural elements and natural resources within Pitkin County, but also includes aspects related to disaster preparedness from a kind of natural hazard standpoint, as well as aspects related to water, and that's both at a quantity and a quality standpoint, and air quality, kind of other aspects related to our natural environment surroundings. Economic health, the scope of that chapter.
Before you jump
Yeah.
into that, just on regarding natural environment, you say habitat and wildlife. It seems that what is trending with that is just understanding ranges of habitat and how animals move and how, of course, we're bisecting everything with highways. And I'm just wondering, is habitat, what do you call it? It's not migration, but it's something close to it where you've got movement patterns.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that would be part of it, but I'm just wondering.
Correct. And I would just say, yeah, part of that kind of diving into existing plans, the Watershed Biodiversity Institute did a big,
They've got-
study that was related to connectivity. So that's a kind of plan that was not done directly by Pitkin County, but by a partner that speaks
can
to that and
incorporate
is
it. Yeah.
informing that aspect of the plan.
Great,
Yeah,
thanks.
and that's a good example of kind of another community plan that speaks to aspects that will be, will help inform the direction that is incorporated into the policy areas.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and then the economic health chapter, this is looking at a lot of the growth committee recommendations that we're acknowledging aspects related to our local economy, but also some of the kind of balance issues around the housing and job balance. Where are people coming from, and how are they working in our community, and how does housing fit into part of that dynamic? So recreation and tourism, commercial uses, agriculture, economic services also fits here. As we're looking at this economic health, also we've been communicating with some of our own internal county services. So HHS and their work on economic services, for example, really fits into what that direction is from a county standpoint, based on kind of what our existing work is and where, from a policy standpoint, we may want to have that captured in the comp plan. And then the community health, so access to healthcare, climate change and health, that's really pulling forward a lot of the work that public health has done. Affordable housing, aging population, local food and nutrition, public health and safety, emergency response, and social equity are aspects that are going to be captured within that plan element under community health. And I would just say too that within each of these, there's definitely some flexibility. So we are recognizing what are existing plans, what's existing feedback from the CGAC report, but there is some flexibility in terms of how these policy areas, some may move under the category, or there's a little bit of flexibility as we're proceeding. And then regional approach is really looking at more of a regional partnership level on a variety of topics, including transportation, housing, and watershed protections. So as a part of these different policy areas, we recognize through the CGAC, through the growth committee's kind of acknowledgement on a lot of these topics, that there are some tensions, that there's some kind of big ideas here, but we also recognize that there's some big tensions, many of which have already been acknowledged and called out within the growth committee recommendations, as well as some that came out of and really emerged through the community survey that was done, like this tension between affordable housing and also managing growth as being items that are both priorities, but may have some tension with this. So what this is getting at is we recognize that there are going to be aspects of the comprehensive plan where there's some pull and prioritization that happens between these different areas, and our intent is really to have kind of eyes wide open on that and acknowledge what some of those trade-offs are, acknowledge what the tensions are. So these are ones that are up on the screen that have been really communicated to date. There's been a lot of discussion around them, and we'll kind of circle back to this, but want to just put this in front of you. And this is also a place too, and this kind of, Kelly, to your question, like how do we weigh in? I think another opportunity is, as a part of this conversation, is acknowledging, kind of getting feedback on these tensions and seeing if there's other areas or priorities in terms of how we're negotiating.
Yeah, and I don't think any of these tension areas are new to you all. They've been part of the community discussion for a while now.
And so these The full existing conditions, which was the community profile, the inventory of county plans, and the survey, was presented back to the work group on September 4th. And we've kind of pulled some of the larger takeaways to just share out with you all what some of the feedback was related to the existing conditions and what we shared with the work group. So, kind of the first one, which was really a through line through the growth committee conversations. Trade-offs are everywhere. So really this kind of conversation on making sure we're focusing on those outcomes really being a lot about climate, a lot about quality of life, these larger values, making sure that we're staying vigilant and being aware of some of the unintended consequences, both on the up and down side as we're moving forward.
The second one pops out for me.
Population growth, that one?
Well, the statement beneath it.
Yeah.
Intensity of the lived experience.
Yeah.
So this was getting at, we shared, the population growth from 2000 to today in Pitkin County was 6.9%. And there was this feedback in the work group that said, hey, I thought it would be much larger than that. It feels like there's a lot more people here than what the numbers actually say. So that's what that's getting at, is just there's sometimes this kind of the perception or actually our lived experience is different than what the numbers are communicating.
Francis.
Yeah, Franz.
I thought the census showed that we had lost population between the last census and this one. So where does the 6.9 come from?
2000.
The first 10 years.
Yeah, 2000 to 2010.
Was what?
Growth
That's
happening.
where most of the growth happened, the population growth.
Oh, I see.
So,
So it's been 25 years that it's,
yeah.
okay.
Thank
you.
Right,
The
over
question-
the,
yeah.
since the last comprehensive plan was adopted,
Okay,
is kind
I
of
get it.
that time frame.
The
Yeah.
the concern I have about that is just that you're right. People saying why? It seems like there's so many more people here, and the fact is there are, but they don't live in Pitkin County, and so I kind of wonder if this is it misleading or is it just not a broad enough net we're casting? Because my feeling is that the community boundaries have expanded dramatically in 25 years, even though the county line hasn't. Our community now includes commuters from Battlement Mesa, maybe on
Yeah.
the far end, and that's a population of 120, 130,000 who are part of our community now, if you define it that way. And then you look at the impacts of the airport and the impacts on the roads, and you say, wow, now I understand why it's so busy here.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if we're missing something, or if we need to just have a category that includes the expanding borders of this amorphous border of the community, rather than the county line, because the county line just doesn't even make sense to me anymore in that regard.
Yeah, and I think just,
No, we have an opinion on that.
sorry, just to respond to that specifically, I think what
Yeah.
this is, or what I kind of take from that and what the discussion really was, is that the way that we talk about community, what our community is, and kind of the intensity that we're experiencing in our community, we can't just look at the data for that. We know that.
Right.
And so we need to be careful as we're moving forward with, here are the existing conditions, which is a pretty standard, metrics that all kind of counties do.
Right.
And so as we're thinking about policy decisions and as we're thinking about how our comprehensive plan is framed, we need to make sure that we're recognizing what is the kind of standard data saying, and then where are there areas where we need to, both through some of these studies that were kind of described, get more information so that we can put a better kind of fully understand the picture of what that kind of intensity of lived experience is, because certainly that number 6.9 that's not representative of what the community either is or how that's experienced.
It's so easy, though, to seize on that and say, well, if you live on this side of the Hotel Jerome,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
we live in a tiny little town,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Go ahead.
don't know where it fits in here, but I just think we can't ignore like money as a driver of growth, and to me, like that narrative, which I assume is incorporated in here somewhere, and that the data, which does tell a data story relevant to our list, is just that huge influx of wealth in those last 25 years. Like, to me, that is an incredibly important component of the story, and an incredibly important component of why we're experiencing that, and why it's acting as a driver of commuting workforce, why it's acting as a driver of affordable housing issues, why it's acting as a driver of demand for amenities. You know, I think that our community as a as a refuge, we saw that during COVID. I think we could expect that in a number of other circumstances. It doesn't have to be a pandemic. It could be some sort of evacuation in a place in this country where a lot of people are tied from here. It could be poor weather in Houston that drives increases of population here. It could be, some event in New York City that could cause influxes of population here.
It could be articles in Outdoor Magazine.
So,
That doesn't mean they're all rich moving here, though.
so I do just think that that's like, there has to be a space in here, because I also think that there are tools that exist, whether they are immediately accessible to us in our authorities and, is a different question. But I feel like there are tools to exist to help get around that, or that this community could decide to pursue or not pursue, depending on which trade-offs we want to balance. One of the things I come back to is, like, do we want to say, hey, 40% second homes, like, that's good. We're good on that number. We don't need to increase that number. We think that the community is going to go way out of balance if that continues to increase. We don't even measure that. Like, we don't even look at that. We don't even have those conversations. Those are not tools immediately available to us, but they are tools that could exist in the toolbox that, maybe we decide to pursue. So I guess that's a little rambly, but I think some of that has to come into play in these conversations as well.
And I think, as Hannah Hunt said, one of the bigger data pieces, and I think this speaks a little bit to what you're talking about, Kelly, that I think we're all hopeful and will bring back and can kind of inform with those tools, is that economic analysis of the residential economy, because it's such a unique thing here that, our traditional economic data just doesn't speak to what that is, how big of an impact that is, and then, being able to shed light on that to then say, what are the policy tools that we might want to be considering to address or balance it out a little bit more.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah,
It was good. That's a worthy conversation.
Well, I think that's what's pulling more people. You
Right,
can get
yeah.
paid more here. You can make a lot of more money here.
It's part of it.
Well, I can see that we've set incredibly high bar here for you guys.
Every county does this, right?
It seems a little over the top, honestly. I don't see how you guys are going to do this. I mean, can we stretch the time out? It's just like so many things to look at. It doesn't seem that attainable. It just seems like so much. Just to read about all these different areas of study, and then plan making, and then approval, and then changing, and all of that, just to read through it is exhausting. So doing it is a whole nother level.
So what's the likelihood you'll finish on time?
And on the $1 million budget.
Are you looking at me?
Well, I would say, remember too, the comp plan is the first piece, right? So that's at
Right.
June 2025, and then we've got to go into all the code adoption elements of it, and so.
And you do have outside people helping, right?
Yes, yes.
Jessica's just representative of the team.
That's,
And
she's just representative. It's not just person, it's
not
people.
just Jessica.
Yeah. But, and Hannah Hunt's maybe going to jump in here as well, but I think the January 2025, June? Yeah, sorry,
June.
whoa, yeah. June 2025 deadline for final adoption of the comprehensive plan is achievable. That's at least, that is our goal, and we'll keep you in the loop if that changes, but
As a
That's
long-range
our goal.
planner with the county for how many decades, I completely trust you.
yeah, did I say 2025?
Well, I have to ask a
Yeah.
question. Why do you guys call her Hannah Hunt?
That's my, yeah, Hannah Hunt is my first name. It's like Marianne or.
Oh, really?
South-
Patty
southern,
Cajun.
it's a southern
Yeah,
thing,
so-
Patty.
Oh, I didn't
Like
know
what?
that.
Okay.
HH, right.
I didn't realize that.
Right.
So you prefer
Mine's
to be
my
called
last
Hannah
name,
Hunt?
right?
Right, Hannah Hunt is what I go by, all in one.
I was like, we're being so proper with her.
Right, and why only her? Why does that happen? Yeah.
She's
They just
stylish.
changed her last name since she got
I know, I'm
married,
Hannah
so
Hunt
now to
Wander now.
throw that.
Sort of like,
So,
Even better.
Genghis
Thank you.
Khan is like first name.
Inseparable.
What was Genghis Khan's last
I don't know if I
name?
want that association, Steve, but.
I'm so
Right.
glad we
I
got
think it was
that straight.
Attila.
Well, I've never
formally
called you
out
Hannah
there.
Hunt. I just called you Hannah. I'm sorry about
I know
that.
now, we gotta call her Hannah.
So-
You don't have to call me Patty K though.
Yeah.
On Steve's note, Attila the Hun was just his first name too, right? Just wondering. No, I'm not making any.
You're in company with big personalities.
Vlad the Impaler, Steve.
I was just gonna say, Francie, to your question, you know, a lot of this is really interrelated in the way that the CGAC recommendations were both code recommendations, also policy recommendations, also got at community values. That's part of why this is all happening at the same time, is because going out and just updating one portion of the land use code really doesn't get at the full suite. So yes, I mean, there is a lot that's all connected to it, but really having that live in comprehensive plan from a policy statement, land use code, and then building and energy, it kind of has to happen
Yeah,
that way in
I
order
see
to be
that.
comprehensive to the recommendations.
Yeah, it's kind of
But-
like when the growth committee brought us their plans, they said, don't take it apart. It has to all go together.
Yeah. And I would just say, if we go back to maybe one slide before that has the bolded ones, or maybe one before. So the areas where kind of our focus, and Greg, to your kind of question before about
Right,
what's the
right.
bold, you know, what does that mean? So the areas that are generally in bold, for the most part, we have a pretty clear direction in terms of what our policy aim is, right? In terms of climate action, there's a clear board direction on climate action. So the focus as we're moving forward with the generative policy is really in the areas that are unbolded. So just in terms of kind of the work is carrying through existing climate action direction, but our focus in terms of really going out and getting additional community feedback, really diving into the kind of community direction is primarily in the areas where there's not bolded. So just to kind of help have that, you know, for all of us, just that there are kind of smaller targeted areas where we're really trying to be focusing. And that October 30th comprehensive plan open house then is really focused on some of those other
Got it.
kind of areas.
And they are significant, but we don't have to cover the entire suite here.
I'm putting it on my calendar in case it's not already. October 30th.
So,
So I think,
Yeah.
So kind of just big picture takeaway from the work group, and then we'll ask it to all of you, is as we went through, as Hannah Hunt went through kind of all the comp plan and just said like, what's striking for you? And I think this isn't new. This is also what was somewhat presented in the growth committee recommendations, but really this tension about the public facing economy versus the private economy, you know, the chef leaving the restaurant to go work in the private economy, and so that consistent backfill that we're trying to do as a community when we're losing some workforce or other aspects. And so I think that really continues to be a lens of which the work group is looking at a lot of these pieces. And then they took it kind of that next step, which is then the decision making for those public investments. You know, how are we balancing the community benefits and thinking about that public facing economy, that community servicing economy. So which is a really interesting piece of it. And then I think the other theme that came up to the earlier point is this is a lot, right? There is a lot in here, and I think the work group will help keep us very focused to say, let's not lose sight of the reason we're doing this. It's for the climate action goals. It's for moving the recommendations forward, understanding they're interrelated, and there's a lot more to bring in, but that they definitely are going to continue to keep us as focused as we can with how broad it is of those pieces, to get some code actually adopted at the end of the day.
I have a question. While you're all, this is amazing. This is truly amazing, and it's really exciting. And I'm hoping that it's comprehensible enough that we can all get it, grok it, right? For that word that I don't use often. Do we have examples? Like, are you going to go out and look for examples of communities and cultures that have done this before us? You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, although we often do for our specific needs. But there are really developed communities in Europe, for instance. I always look at Europe because they've been doing it for 300 or 400 years longer than we have, or 1,000. And there may be examples of what to do and what not to do there that we could draw from, as well as other places around the planet. And I'm hoping that we have the ability to look at some of those things and bring them back and talk about them with the group, because some of this ground has been trod before, you know, with communities with with the growth pressure and the population demands that they've seen. And I just keep thinking, boy, there are probably some really great examples of what's worked and what hasn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of the data analysis includes case studies on that piece of it, but I would also just say a lot of kind of that came into the growth committee process too, right? So the recommendations that we're trying to move forward are coming from what are those things that we can actually be doing to manage the growth and intensity. So some of it is leaning on what's been brought to the table that inform those recommendations, and then bringing more case studies of, as I've been terming it, like concept to code, right? Like it was conceptual recommendations and how we start to actually put that in.
Does that mean we get to go on site visits?
Yeah, you'll have to go on junkets.
Okay.
I know there's a city in Europe where they just flooded all the streets with water. I think, what a brilliant idea. We could do that.
That's what we did in New Orleans when I was growing up, but it wasn't intentional, I guess.
Climate change might get us there.
It'll be a while before we get that.
Just had to have the right kind of boat so you could float around.
Yeah.
So lastly, you know, part of these updates is, you know, what feedback from all of you as this moves forward? Is there anything that strikes or key takeaways that we haven't touched on that you really want us as staff and the project team to be thinking about as we move forward? Or just let it all sit in and you can let us know later too, because there's a lot.
I don't know, if you can figure out how to balance the tension, let me know.
What can we do to inspire, you know, the interested parties in the community to jump in on this and participate? And you know, I'm hoping these open houses are really fun, actually. It's like, hey, we get to think about our future. Come on. I'm hoping we can inspire some great feedback and conversation.
I guess I'm wondering, do you think there's like a fair shot at getting like balanced information from the community? Like, are we sort of equally weighted to get input from, you know, all of our stakeholders? I don't know if I guess I'm just wondering, like,
No.
are there just
Answer
people
this.
who are like
Yeah, I was gonna say
inherently
that's
disadvantaged on being able to provide input on this? I mean, we're really talking about a vision for what we want in 2050, and how do we, you know, guard against that vision being driven by those who have the time and capacity and interest and representation to create it? And how do we mitigate that? You know, do we need to be more intentional about mitigating if there are sectors or stakeholders that are potentially more disadvantaged to helping us create that vision?
Yeah, welcome to all
I know.
ideas on that. And I think one of the things is, and that's why we're trying to do the focus groups versus open house. So the more you all can help inspire folks to see how the community open house is. I think one of the things we've talked about as a group is comp plans and planning process. Typically, it's like, how do you get people that might be a renter or commuter that doesn't own property, how do you get them to see what's at stake for them in this process? And so trying to keep the open houses to be at more the, get rid of the jargon and just kind of be part of the regular community visioning efforts, but it still takes inspiring folks to say that. And then having those focus groups where that more technical piece is to get those experts at the table, but hopefully there is some general weaving of the technical and the regular community aspects that are necessary, but trying to be intentional of not getting too jargony when we go out to the broad public.
And also, I think it's important to remember that the Community Growth Advisory Committee that you all appointed was intended to provide somewhat of a cross-section of the community, and they provided really the baseline for where we are starting from and will move forward from. So, there's that, at least as a hopefully as a representative group that established, our initial work, right?
It looks like you're waiting with your pen for us to say something. Just thinking about water and how we talk about water in the West and the rivers being over allocated. We've handed out more water than exists, right? And I'm wondering if that's just a common practice in communities across the West, if not the entire planet, is that you over allocate the resources and everybody figures it out somehow. And I hope
Or
that
not.
that's not, or not. Yeah, I'm hoping as the pressure grows, you do it less and less. And I'm wondering, how do you all know about best practices. You study that with planning, and that to me it's fascinating because I'm concerned about resources going into this, because there's so many things we want to do and so many ambitions we have, but there are vastly limited categories of resources that aren't going to change much. Maybe they'll get worse with climate change, and I guess we have to keep an eye on that, and it sounds like you are. Any thoughts on how you move forward? You can look at. I think about the way we've got the aquifers depleting under eastern Colorado because they just assume they can keep adding development, and clearly they've gotten away with it this far.
You've read Collapse by Jared Diamond?
I
About
have,
the
yeah,
collapse
yeah,
of-
right,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's what you're
there's
talking
that,
about.
right, yeah. We could put Jared Diamond is for guns, germs, and steel, or collapse, right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like reading for people who are going to engage in this. It's like, yeah, there's no guarantee we're going to be able to keep doing what we've been doing. Not that helps you. Go ahead.
So I keep envisioning the caucus involvement in this whole thing. And I know that my caucus is going to want to try to plug me into land use issues when I'm no longer on this board. And that could, and I know they're going to be trying to pick my brain on, what is the comprehensive plan? What do we want to do? What caucus input do we need for that? So I'm just trying to picture 6 months and a year ahead right now. And right now, in our caucus area, all of our focus is on one property.
Right.
That has all of us really concerned and really trying to have a good outcome there. And so I'm not sure how much energy right now will come from the Snowmass Capitol Creek caucus for working on this project, but I know there are people really concerned about it, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Well, right now we have John O. McBride, who's committed to be a part of the work group, who was on the growth committee, but I think is also sort of representing the caucus on that work group as well. So at least we have somebody who, you know, hopefully will be able to be going back to the folks in your caucus and having those conversations as we're going forward.
So we can expect to see Steve coming in as a
There's a
lobbyist.
time frame you can't come before the
You-
board after you leave office.
Oh, is there, what, 6 months or something?
I don't know, 2 years.
2 years? Oh, really? You
So
won't,
Steve, you're off the hook
you're
for
off
2
hook for
years.
2 years? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but that's coming before the board, right? So there may
Well,
be
you can't sit there
opportunities.
and come before it. You can do whatever you want outside this room, but well, pretty much whatever you want.
Wow, good to
I
know.
didn't know that. It's interesting.
Any?
What's next?
Yeah,
Or is that
I
it?
think that's it.
Well,
Good job.
I
Dates.
think George Newman violated that with the open space project.
who did?
George,
Oh,
in the Hunter Creek
oh.
Historic
It's just
District.
for land use items.
Oh, okay.
No, he's been out of office for a while.
All right,
I think that's it.
Thank
There you
you
go.
for that.
3,
And
4
next up,
this is
here we
4 years,
come.
so.
Here we
share
go.
October 30th with your friends, neighbors, folks
Do
you
we
meet at
know
the
the
grocery
time of
store.
day?
5 to 7.
5 to
Is it in
7.
costume?
5.
Oh,
Yeah, it oughta
gosh,
be.
I didn't even put that together.
It's the 30th, it's not the 31st.
I know, but we celebrate Halloween whenever we have the opportunity.
Halloween.
Patty, yeah, you can send
chance
people
I
in costume if that's appropriate.
Right, dress up as your favorite land use.
Right. Dress up as your favorite land use planner.
Or your favorite land use tension. There you go.
Or bring Halloween treats.
Right. There will be treats. Well,
Yeah. Great,
Yeah.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
The next one.
Okay, October 30th. It's on the calendar.
All right.
Can we just take a minute here?
Sure, we could take a
That'd be
5-minute break.
Thank you so much, guys.
I need
5-minute break.
Francie, I need
And or-
Francie.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are going to have an update on REMP. Kara's here with a team.
Brought a team.
Okay, take it away. I wanted to say, probably no conversation about REMP is complete without some discussion of core as well, so we'll talk about core thing
And I
too.
think that there might be some folks on
Right,
too.
great, excellent.
So Kara Silbernagel, Deputy County Manager.
Alex Sanchez, Community Development Analyst.
Connie Baker, Picken County Budget Director.
And Liz Woods, Finance Director.
Great, thank you all for coming
We have
in.
the team. So good afternoon. Part of the reason that we are here before you today is REMP is complex. And as we were going through some of the different changes that have happened, in particular over the past couple of years, we realized that outside of budget and maybe core presentations, you all don't really have much of an update about REMP, or it's been in different energy code updates or otherwise. So this is to bring the energy code updates, what we're seeing in the actual program collections, as well as with the financing and budgeting side together ahead of the 2025 budget process. So with that, quick background, it was established in 1999 when the city and county shared a joint planning and building department. The intent has not really changed, right? The intent is to offset those environmental impacts and greenhouse gas emissions.
1989?
1999. Did I say 89? I might have. And that the fees collected by the REMP program were to fund renewable energy and energy efficiency projects in Picken County. So what exactly is it? I think it's important to remember REMP requires homeowners and commercial buildings to mitigate their energy use, ideally through on-site renewables, or really the REMP fund is, again, that payment in lieu option. And there's folks probably online and in this room that could speak to the original vision far better than I could, but again, the vision was that REMP would no longer exist because in theory people were going to do the right things, right? That the energy usage and everything would be aligned with our community values, and the mitigation we'd get, we wouldn't have that excessive energy use, and that there wouldn't be a need to have that payment in lieu option. So the good news is 25 years later, we've had much more aggressive building and energy codes. You guys had a huge success at the end of last year with the external energy budget that have really reduced the ability for that excess energy, and again, then decrease the way and the ability to pay your way out of the excessive energy that kind of was on the table beforehand. So that's kind of REMP today. This is an abbreviated timeline, so, but just to kind of give the overarching of REMP, as it also then kind of relates both to the building code and some of the financial aspects of it. So again, it was established in 1999. In 2003, the county adopted its building and energy code, and that's when the two departments split. There was obviously other energy and building code adoptions along the line, but just kind of calling out some significant ones is that then in 2010 is when the 6,000 square foot cap of snowmelt was adopted. And that was, adopted in 2010. And then in 2013, there is another code adoption, and that's just in here really as we look at kind of the open permits that we still have as it relates to REMP. Some are going into that 2013 code and prior. 2016 was we adopted the energy code. In 2016, we also clarified the use of REMP funds. Prior codes didn't really say for what purposes they could be. I think there was always an intent behind it, but we put it into the code, and that is where it really spoke to for administering the IECC building code, renewable energy, community education, as well as Picken County's climate action plan. And in 2016, that is also when the county assumed REMP collections prior to that, the city was collecting rent on behalf of the county. And so I think from that 2016 is when we really started to get more eyes in of how the county's rent program was, maybe we were seeing differences than what was happening at the city. 2020, Earth Day 2020, I'll never forget, Energy Code was adopted, and then we're calling it 2024 because that's when it was effective, but the external energy budget was adopted. And then what we've started to forecast, and Alex is going to be much better talking about this, is, you know, the lag that we see in REMP fees is we're anticipating probably 2027 is when we start to see those REMP collections and kind of that vision of REMP really going away, probably starting to hit in that 2027 when those building permits are coming through, and kind of that cliff. So that's the future ahead. Put this in just kind of, the great news is this is 2018 to 2022. We've bent the curve. You all bent the curve in 2020 with the external energy budget, but what kind of we started to see is that the amount of renewable energy that was available and being installed on site versus the exterior energy budget, and therefore also kind of the increase in the payment in lieu, shows you how much that starts to diverge. This is pulled from the utility data that August Haas did for us a couple of years ago, but it was a good way to show kind of where we started to see that divergence of rent funds were going up a lot, and we were seeing less of the on-site, but also seeing more and more external energy. So again, the good news is we've bent the curve with the recent code adoption, but as it applies to REMP, we're going to be seeing that lag in REMP collections over the next couple of years.
What do you mean we bent the curve? It looks like the renewable, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, no.
It looks like the renewable energy is going down, but that the exterior energy use is going up.
With your 2024 external energy budget that you just adopted,
Yeah.
that's basically slashing that external energy line that's going up.
So the red line's going to flatten out.
Yeah.
Or go down.
Okay, you're just talking about next.
So we
Yeah.
haven't bent
Okay,
this
thank you.
curve
Yes.
yet.
Thank
It's
you.
not
We will.
visual.
Hopefully
got
we'll
it.
be looking at 2027 and see that going way down.
Yep.
Can I hand it to you?
Yeah. I think as was mentioned in the last budget presentation regarding REMP, I've done an extensive analysis of all rent payments since the start of the program for county projects. Previously, there used to be an estimation of collections each year of what would be available to spend, what would be retained for potential refunds, and then what would be reserved or held aside. And that might have worked for the city based on what they've got in their kind of, building sector. But with the county, there's a lot of other things that come into play. Obviously, the space on some of these sites allow for the renewables. The chart that you just saw, there's also a large ability to have excess exterior energy. And so really that estimate never kind of held true when we were looking at our own practice. So in that in-depth analysis, we looked at really from the start of the program to today. And also in that, we looked at some of the codes. So you see here, REMP collections under 2013 codes or prior, the 2016, 2020, and we've just started to see some of the 2024 codes come online. We've got a number of permits within there. We've got the average rent payment in some of those codes. And again, the average, it's something we'll show, but some of those could have, full exterior snow melt, large pools, any of these other things. And so sometimes there's a wide variation on what the rent payment is. But again, just showing you an average. The average C of O time for those that have closed out, so that's from when the project is submitted to when their certificate of occupancy is issued. And that certificate of occupancy is a key piece for when those funds become available to be used, as is currently written in all of those codes. And then an average refund rate that we're seeing. So here we've got, projects that are in that 2020 code or sooner are starting to close out actually much quicker. those are projects that have actually started in our SAGES system, have been reviewed in that system, and are going through inspections. So that works well for them. We do have projects that are older, that were started in our legacy system, Eden, and so it's never really well fit into the box. And so, and those are larger projects which have other pieces that currently might not be available for a project that starts today. So that average C of O time for something in 2013, we're seeing is 8 years. We do have some outliers, some projects, and some of the larger subdivisions that have taken longer than that. So in this kind of analysis, we're looking at different projects under different codes, and some might have, the opportunity to pay more in REMP. Some more currently don't have that opportunity. And so this is just a new layer of complexity that we're really having to track with this. But just wanting to present that to you as you see some of those code changes that do happen and how that is impacting the permits under those codes.
I think the one other thing that we don't have in here is we've got the average refund rate, but part of, and this gets into kind of the change in the budgeting too, and is the variance in that refund rate, right? And Alex or Jeff, you could probably speak more, but it's not just like, 33% and we can kind of predict that. It's that some might be coming in and at 20%, some might be coming in at 80%, and depending on the project. I can share, I was in a meeting with Alex and he was like, if we would have had this meeting yesterday, we would have had 1 million more, because we don't know what people are coming in on these refunds until the back end. And so it's making it really hard to be able to predict what is in the fund for future years.
So you can't, from this small amount of data, you can't predict any sort of trend line. Is that what I'm getting
To
from
Alex's
this, going
credit, he
forward?
has tried, and I think
Refund rate isn't growing, or it isn't declining. You can't tell us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if, we analyze any of these individual codes and start to say, okay, I think there's some trend there. But the fact that we've got multiple codes in there, is a new layer of complexity. It's just too difficult to say. If we give this percentage and assume that, it does vary. So, by day, something like in the more recent 2020 codes or even 2024, I suspect a lower refund rate. Some of the older projects, whereas they originally might have paid just to get in the door and get their permit issued, are then coming back around and actually putting renewables on. Some are just forfeiting that opportunity and saying, you know what, I'm fine, I want my C of O, let's close this out. So each project is so unique in what we see that, that's just so difficult to put an average. And on our next slide here, we will talk about what's sitting aside in a refund liability account and kind of the new process that has been set up. So as soon as those projects close out and when those funds are available, we are moving it into a revenue account and recognizing it as such that it can be spent, which we feel better as an accounting practice because it's no longer based on estimate. This is based on actual now.
Do you want this one?
Yeah. So getting into this one, obviously that top line item there, the refund liability account, having 11, almost 12 million in there is a big number. But again, we kind of caution that number. That could, within a year, have some refunds. That could draw that down 8 million, 7 million. We don't know. That could also have a large amount that's moved into a revenue account as these projects start to close out. If we look at the collections in 2023 and 2024, we have 3.7 in 2023 and about 4.6 in 2024 so far as of September. But when you look at the deobligation side, so the way that these funds become deobligated, once a certificate of occupancy is issued, the way the code writes, they have 180 days after that C of O is issued to request a refund. Once that 180 days is up, they are no longer eligible for a refund. They can't come back a year after that and say, hey, I'd like to, request a refund, put renewables. The clock stops then. So we do an analysis to say, have they requested any refund of their rent payment? If not, we move that remaining balance into the revenue account. So in 2023, we had about 750,000 moved over. Currently, we've got about 1.3 million moved over, and we will continue to look at that. I do an analysis each month to identify what is deobligated. Then we move it from that liability account over into the revenue account. And that's what will start to grow going forward and be available for, any of those expenditures that might previously have been drawing down from, that large amount. This way we know for sure what's available. If there's a influx of projects that come in, are able to offset, and we have to refund that large amount, we're not putting ourselves in potential where we've overextended that, fund than what's, it's obligated for.
Can you just just to clarify, the de-obligated 180 days for 2023 was a total of 754. Does the 2024 include?
That
That's
is
just
separate.
January, September. So that's separate. So, what are we anticipating? Well, I still want to figure out where we are,
Well,
since I don't know.
yep, we'll get there.
Okay, thank you.
So some of this was same as was presented in the budget last year, but just some of the trends, and I'll let Liz and Connie jump into this, but Alex did an amazing in-depth review of all REMP collections since the inception of the program to kind of see the trends, track current, to see if there was any way to try and predict trends. And I think you can very well say nothing feels comfortable to predict right now.
It's a small sample size.
Yeah. So looked at implementing changes for the accounting rather than going from estimation going to actuals, and putting those collections into a liability account as a deposit until the project is closed out, versus those funds actually being, once the initial rent payment was made, being moved into an actual revenue account. So that changes, then you don't see those initial collections on the books right away until they are actually closed out. You don't see those in any kind of budget. And so now the REMP budget and the REMP revenue is only based on funds once they are de-obligated. Everything else is really sitting in kind of that deposit box.
So the last bullet point is past tense.
Yes.
Yeah, in the past,
Yes.
much of the balance was moved to liability.
Yeah.
So we had a huge balance, although we couldn't depend on that. Is
Yeah,
that what-
so basically we had a fund balance account that was higher than it should have been because we were collecting those revenues and we were saying that they were de-obligated basically in the year that they were collected, which we ended up finding was not really a true statement. And so that's why we looked at the accounting process and we said that, well, actually we are going to be refunding up to 30, 80%, some depending on the permit. Some of them, I think they go up to 90%. I mean, so it just depends on what happens there. And so we were saying that does not actually make sense from an accounting point of view because those funds, then we could have a huge expense in a future year or a huge hit against that revenue when we should really be looking at them after the fact. And so that's why we made that change. We made the change at the end of 2023. And so that's where that fund balance change happened, and we moved and we set up that liability account. And so that's where that, I believe it was at about $9 million, I think, at the end of 2023. That was in the liability account, and that is now up to that $11 million that, or almost $12 million that Alex showed in the previous slide.
Kara, do you want me to mention the budget
Yeah,
impacts
yes.
at this point? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. How that impacts the budget for 2024 is that when we were budgeting for 2024 about a year ago, we thought we had more fund balance. And we were going off of an assumption of having closer to $3 million in the fund balance available to spend. We budgeted to spend a good part of that. And but then once the books were closed out, it was switched to the new method of only recognizing what is, we're 100% sure is de-obligated. That meant that we started 2024 with a fund balance of about $300,000 instead of about $3 million. The impact this year is that we can't spend everything that we budgeted to spend. And Kara has a
Yeah, I can go there.
chart.
This one or the next one?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
sorry, I just want to make clear, the money was not lost. There was no, nothing happened. There was no like misappropriation or anything like that. It was just that it was a change in accounting practice.
Grow.
Yeah,
Can't spend it.
that's a good way of thinking of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have more sitting in that liability account, but less that we can spend.
So the liability account, the escrow, as you call it, is the obligated account. This money is obligated to a particular, perhaps a reimbursement. Until that is cleared, it stays in that liability account.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand the jargon. Thank you.
So we budgeted in 2024 about 850 some for core, 500,000 for the microgrid project, and then the library and health and human services building electrification projects, 500,000 each. What we have done year to date is we are doing the core contributions. We've made the contribution to the microgrid, but we cannot do the contributions for the library or health and human services electrifications in 2024. So we will hold back on those and may not be able to re-budget for them until future years, maybe in 2026 or 2027. So the impact then is that the general fund needs to pick up the balance.
Okay.
In the meantime, until REMP can catch up.
And then can rent pay back the general fund? Okay, that was,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
Is that the question? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Kelly, did you have?
No.
No, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Do you want
Want me to keep going?
Yeah.
We're also looking at, okay, so what do we budget for 2025 as expecting what could be de-obligated in revenues. And so 1 million is our estimate on that. We will start 2025 with basically a zero fund balance or close to zero in the REMP fund. So we can only spend what comes in the unobligated revenues. We need to borrow from the general fund basically to cover those building electrification projects until there are enough de-obligated funds from REMP that REMP can catch up and still meet those commitments that we had in the past. So there's really very little available in the REMP fund to for the board to be able to decide on in the 2025 budget.
And I think just adding on, making this change, one of the things that we've talked about is probably keeping that 1 million year over year, and then whatever gets de-obligated, hopefully we start to see that fund balance come up so it can repay general fund or as other projects and initiatives. There's comfort that the REMP fund we will get some of that repayment back, but when and to the degree of what it is just such a level of uncertainty we don't know.
I have a question. Sorry, we've got people online,
Yeah.
and this could easily be a question from one of us, but Bob Circus, who's on he's done the financial side of the core board, is asking, and I don't intend to do this constantly, but this popped up. Why was the decision made to create a liability account for all of REMP instead of creating a reserve account for the 40% of REMP funds that have historically been paid out? So I'm not sure Bob heard the first part of the conversation, that we don't actually know that it's 40%. It varies too much for us to accurately predict what that percentage would be, right? What you're saying is we were creating a possible huge liability because we didn't know what the reimbursements were going to be, and it's too variable, so we can't pin 40% on it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes,
Is that the answer?
depending upon when the
I just
COs
answered it
come
for
through.
Yes.
Bob, but if you have a better way of saying that, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think A good example is, say, the 2016 codes and rent payments that were made then at that point. The practice in the community at that point was to submit a permit, requesting whatever exterior energy would, and then make the rent payment. It was never required to actually have a plan in place, the renewables, where all that would be done. So a lot of people would make the rent payment and then submit their electrical permit, maybe a change order, and request a rent refund prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. In the 2020 code, that changed, that those requirements were coupled together. We still have quite a few permits under that 2016 code. Like I mentioned, some of them might not come back in, might not request it. Some of them have the potential for almost 100% refund because they were able to put renewable on
They're
site.
8 or 9
because they
years
were
out.
Yes, and so that variability of, just the practice at that point. Now, changes were made in more recent codes to prevent that. But we still have quite a few permits in that 2013, 2016 that are still active and still eligible for a refund. And so putting anyone, holding 40%, 50%, could never, at least for me, make me feel comfortable that we could cover that obligation, or we might not be taking from future payments to hopefully cover that cost and, put us in a cycle. So that's why we decided to put all of it in this liability account, market for potential refunds until, as the code states, 180 days after certificate of occupancy, because that is when the code says that those funds become deobligated and eligible to be spent as revenue.
And I will say that it's better accounting practice to go off of actuals rather than estimates whenever possible.
Right.
And so, once we were able to get the actuals, and that was the better practice, that was part of the reason why we changed as well.
How long do you think it'll take to clean this up? Like when those 2016 and 2020 permits come in, we're looking at another 8 years or something. Yeah. How long do you think it'll take before those nebulous commitments of ramp funding are cleared from the books, and we're on this entire the new policy? How long will it take to clean that up? Just wondering, because that may take away some of the variability and uncertainty that we're seeing.
So I will say that we already have made the cleanup, so that cleanup process is already done. It's now just a matter of the community development department going through and working with the owners and the contractors for those old permits to get those either C of O'd or expired or resolved, basically, in some way, shape, or
So
form.
it's going faster than
yeah.
as cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering how
Well,
many
and
loose
just, we're not
ends
gonna see 8.5 years on average. It looks like we're seeing 2.5 years.
2.5
on
now.
average.
Well, and take into account, right, the longer ones, you're pulling in the ones that are lasting longer. That chart is only showing what's have closed out right now, so it doesn't show how many are. So I think in general, most are kind of, you have 2 to 3 years or 5 to 7 years based on kind of building time.
Francie?
So does this lack of available funds that shouldn't have been available affect what's going to happen with core, with money that we're going to have for core? Is it going to put it on, is it going to be a moratorium on giving money to core? What does it mean?
It's not a moratorium, and that's one of the things that it's up to the board during the budget process, but essentially you're going to have $1 million. There's we don't know what the ask is from core yet, but you'll have an ask from core as well as at least the $1 million for the electrification project too. And so
Yeah.
it's gonna be tough. And so one of the things is, kind of depends how you all want to spend the money and the projects coming forward, but really anticipating that it's that $1 million year over year. And what proportion do you all want to see going to core from the rent funds versus what might be some of your other projects on the table?
And we can anticipate pulling from the general fund pretty much each year to make up that balance. And that's something that's okay. It'll be reimbursed,
Yeah,
right?
at least for the
Time being,
Yeah.
whatever how long that is. That's good to know. So the money's not gone. The money hasn't gone away. It's just that we need to we changed the accounting to be more accurate and more responsible with it. And it also means we're going to be pulling from the general fund, where before we were more hesitant to but we also know we're gonna be getting reimbursed.
But in addition to that, in addition to that, I would say it is being diminished because we're not receiving as many REMP funds in general because people are doing their own mitigation. So there
Right.
is the threat of REMP continuing to decrease, the collection of REMP funds to continuing to decrease.
Right, that's been anticipated. It hasn't entirely happened, though, in recent years, but we expect
But
it
now
to.
with the new code
I was
adoption,
gonna
it
say, with the
will.
new code, it's not a matter of choice, it's a matter of you will have to do this, so therefore, there's no REMP issue involved there, you just
Yeah,
have to follow the
there
new
won't be
code.
REMP, period.
Yeah, the
Question?
200 million BTU, I think, is something important. So in that 2024 code change, whereas previously you could have snow melt, you could have heat tape, a lot of different things. With the new addition of a 200 million BTU cap, that will cap the max rent payment essentially that you can have, which I believe, yeah,
Is it
Jeff had
500?
really
It's
got in
500,
there.
isn't it? Sorry, I just want to get it. You said 200 million
200 million
is the
BTU.
exterior energy cap?
Yeah, let's see
Yeah.
it here.
Yeah, okay, yeah, come on up, Jeff. Thanks. For some reason, I was fixated on 500.
The one thing I'd like to say that,
Is the-
This is Jeff Erickson,
yeah, Jeff
everybody.
Erickson, Chief Building Official. The code adoption April of 2020, it pretty much forced people, new single families to install solar. So they had to design the solar up front, right, to offset their internal energy. So while they were doing that, they would go ahead and design the solar system to handle the exterior energy as well. So I think the permits from 2020 that came in April of 2020 to now, to 2024, you'll see less refunds because the systems were designed to mitigate the exterior energies.
So they didn't pay as much upfront to have anything refunded
Yeah,
on the backside.
they're designing the PV system now before the home is built. And it's better to do it then than to come back and refund it later. That makes sense.
So the
It
question is, we will have no money to fund core. That wasn't really a question.
No,
was
that
it?
that was one of the concerns, because I think John was told that there was not going to be any money next year, so naturally that caused a,
Right. There's going to be limited, and like I said, it depends on how you all want to see it, but you have $1 million, and I think Core's level last year was 850, and the traditional services was around that 675, and so kind of what's the use of the rent funds that you all want to see, as well as borrowing from the general fund.
copy that for our projects as well as Core's, keeping Core going,
Yeah.
right?
And so just kind of to walk you through, so kind of next steps, just so you all are aware. Sorry, it's not in order, but GR is going to come, I believe, on October 1st and give an update on the electrification, because we do know that is running a little bit higher.
That's the microgrid.
No,
Or
the building electrification, that's running a little bit higher, so we are going to have, being able to see what those costs are. Then there's the overall budget, so you'll get a good sense of the general fund on October 8th. Core will be coming to present their progress report and funding request on October 15th, and then the REMP budget is set for November 7th.
Right. One of the considerations I think is going to be interesting with the conversation is actually we're kind of a competitor to Core now, the county, with our own projects. And so my question is, what's the bang for the buck? I mean, where is the money best spent in order to achieve the ultimate goal? We all share the same goal, which is reducing carbon footprint, right? Maybe you could say it more articulately, but we share the same goal. What's the best way forward? But what's the best use of the money? And hopefully we'll be able to keep dispensing it, to the best sources. But I think we have to kind of keep that in mind as we're doing it.
And I would say, the intent of REMP and kind of the use of the funds is for administering the building code as a part of it, the community education, but also, taking on Pitkin County's climate action plan and the community goals. And so your direction to move forward with building electrification is kind of owned by the county. It's the county facilities, and same with the microgrid pieces. So as more projects come up, it'll be something definitely to be looking at.
Right. Okay.
Any
That
other
makes it easy.
questions or?
Find any money kicking around anywhere in empty drawers or under the bed?
Sure.
Well, it's
Let us
just,
know.
it's interesting, having both Mr. Sterling in the back here and myself being involved with CORE since it was when it became a, 1999. Kind of always the understanding that at the end of the day, we're gonna get people to do the right thing and CORE their monies won't be coming in through REMP. And it looks like between the county's effort with the energy code and with people either choosing to do the right thing or having no choice but to do the right thing, we're in that situation now. How do we keep CORE going to do the things CORE can do that the county doesn't do? And how do we fund it? And that's gonna be tough.
Right.
But just so you know, on the 15th, you may only have 3 commissioners here.
Kelly?
Yeah, just, we'll have more chance to talk about this, but I'm wondering if we need to start to get a little bit more creative on how we fund all of these worthy projects. I mean, part of what I like about the connection between REMP and CORE is it's sort of, levying money against the community broadly for their use, even though it's from a specific project, but sort of out there in the community for broad application back in the community. And I'm wondering if we need to start assessing our own REMP against ourselves that potentially we use for our own projects. Do we look at our building use and start to levy a fee against ourselves that we can then draw down for projects to mitigate that? I think about sort of how the city, like an analogy is like how the city levies like an affordable housing mitigation in their departments and then uses that as a fund for city housing, city employee housing. So I just think we maybe need to start to think about ways that we can raise some dedicated funding internally for these great projects.
That's creative thinking. Thank you for that. What else have you got for us here? I did want to, since Bill came, Bill, if you'd like to say a few words, do you want to come up and say anything? I don't know if you came prepared to say anything or if you're just listening, but.
Well, I would like to say a few.
Come on up. You have to come up to the microphone. Since you're the one CORE board member here, other than me.
Have a seat, Bill.
I know it's a little irregular, unusual work session.
That's the nice thing about the discretion of the chair.
To
The,
have citizens participate.
Well, you're a founder of CORE, and that's why I think it was appropriate, along with Patty's history at CORE, and I think some of us have all been on the CORE board at one point or another.
And we've really appreciated, the CORE board has the presence of your elected officials over the years. When I read the Kara's report, I was baffled by the fact that CORE wasn't mentioned once in her 3-page report. And the idea didn't come from the county, it came from CORE. It was Randy Udall, Joni Matranga, who was another staff member, and Steve Knipe, who happened to be the building inspector of the city at that time. And they brought it to the CORE board, the idea of exactly what has happened, which was the creation of the Renewable Energy Mitigation Fund. And that was kind of named by Randy, who was a pro at coming up with acronyms. I mean, Community Office of Resource Efficiency, CORE, REMP, they're now in the daily speak with everybody. So I found that a little ironic that because what happened is the board approved it, the CORE board approved it, then we brought it to the county commissioners, the city, and Snowmass, and they pretty much passed it. So it was a fee and not a tax, which was essential and kind of a very smart way to do it, because you didn't have to go to the citizens and ask for permission, But and what happened is, for 20 years, from 99 to the late 90s, it funded CORE's operation day to day, and it also underwrote pioneer grants on every environmental project imaginable between here and Glenwood. It really was the whole Roaring Fork Valley. We had lots of discussions about whether it could be spent outside the county or, or outside the cities and the county. And it had an amazingly dramatic impact on lowering the carbon footprint of this valley, and particularly Pitkin County, over this last 20 years. And ironically, what also happened is that we would come to each of the boards in the fall when you all were having your budget hearings, and confirm that the REMP funds would be coming to CORE like they had been coming to CORE every year, and it was never not passed, and we do our budget reporting, and we have CPAs overlooking all of our stuff and stuff. Randy Udall and Mona Newton and I would come to each of the boards every fall and make our pitch and talk about what CORE's doing, and almost every year it was approved. And now what's happening is because for the last 5 years CORE's been working so closely with each ComDev department of all three entities elected for the county, the city, and Snowmass. And as a result of that work and the work of you all, the elected officials, the energy overuse and paying a fee to enable an applicant to do that is going to be less and less possible, which is good for the environment. And so ironically, the REM fund is shrinking, And then also, the county began to see it when they took over responsibility from the city to oversee it, the fund a little more closely, I think. You all began to use it for projects yourself, like the library, a new boiler, and all the things that you all are thinking about doing. So we're shifting as a result of that, CORE is, to new ways to fund the organization. But it funded the operation for 20 years. And had an enormous effect on reducing the carbon footprint of our valley. And so we're going now to grants, contributions, fees for services, all kinds of other sources of income in order to continue all the work that we've been doing it. So at any rate, I just thought there ought to be some clarity about that. And Francie has mentioned the word CORE, and the finance director mentioned the word CORE once too, in your discussion today. But CORE evolved and has done what it's been able to do by virtue of REMP over this last 20 years. Now, in the first 10 years, before, 5 years, from 94 to 99, it was founded in 94, each elected entity paid in a small fee each year to it. And then we just applied for grants and just kind of scrambled for money wherever we could. Joni and Randy were the only two people on staff for that whole 5-year period. And a lot of the board would jump in, and you all had members on the board, and City did, and Snowmass did, and then the supply side had people on the board. Holy Cross, Rocky Mountain Natural Gas, Aspen Electric Department, and I was kind of the demand side. The people side, representing the users. So I just wanted to put in perspective that whole relationship. Now, maybe all of you know that full well, but it was just ironic to me that CORE wasn't even mentioned in your report, when it has been the major user of that money in just astoundingly smart and responsible ways over the last 20 years. And I thank you for enabling us to keep doing that. Now we apply for it like any other applicant, and we scramble, and we hope we might get a few cents from you all. Not cents. I mean, it varies, but we will, as she gave the updated approach on the 15th of October, we'll have representatives from the CORE board and the staff there.
Bill, thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that with us, reminding us and expanding on the understanding of how all this came about. As you've mentioned, and we've all discussed, the the need has only grown. I think Corps could probably take a budget 10 times the size they have and still use it all for projects that are worthwhile as we try to mitigate, carbon emissions and electrify and do all the things that Corps is doing. I know the need is there, the demand is there, but certainly the money isn't. Now that the county has its own huge projects, this library project and the Health and Human Services and the microgrid are huge money-sucking projects, as we've discovered, and that we're kind of on the bleeding edge in a way, so that we can't have a really clear estimate all the time of what things are going to cost. So we expect cost increases as cost inflation keeps going. So we're in a tight spot. I think it's in our best interest to keep Corps going, because Corps has such a great organization and team working on the same goals that we're all applying ourselves to, but we're also spread more thin now. And so there's the dilemma, and I guess in our next budget conversation that's what we'll be trying to figure out, is how can we allocate enough to keep Corps going and keep ourselves going as well.
Well, in the valley, 60% of the carbon footprint is caused by the as-built buildings, both commercial and residential, and those two general categories. 30% transportation, 5% the airport, and 5% the landfill. We're in a unique position because our rural electric, in addition to the City of Aspen Electric Department and what's the name of that other big electric provider?
Holy Cross.
Excel, Holy Cross.
And so Holy Cross will be 100% renewable energy sources for their power by 2030. They're about at 70% plus now. So to electrify makes the most sense in the world. Not a question of measuring, well, natural gas costs this much and electric costs that much. It's a crisis, what we're facing here right now. I mean, so you've got to do everything you all can do in terms of your bailiwick, and the whole county has to do, and the whole valley has to do it, the whole world has to do it. Thank you all very much for that.
Bill, I just wanted to add that Greg definitely has your back. I might have been the one who mentioned Corps, but I'm sure if I hadn't, he would have. He's got your back.
I would have gotten around to it.
Yeah. I just want you to know that.
Well, it just felt like as the meeting unfolded and I had read Kara's report, which is very thorough and very focused, but it really didn't, I think, tell the full story of how all this has evolved. And
Right.
so I thought it would be important to come today to just share this with you.
Thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
And in this same spirit, it's like, we're all in the same team and we're all pushing in the right direction, in the same direction. And we have to just remember that let's try to use all the assets we have. But clearly, there'll never be enough money to do what we aspire to do. So I'll leave it up to you guys to sort that out.
But the elected officials, Greg particularly, has been on longer than almost any, I think maybe
Patty
I
was
was on
there.
for over-
Patty was there for
I was-
25
Patty
years.
was there, and she was
Chairman for
chair.
10
And it
years.
was always your organization which had the chair of Corps,
And then George Newman.
and George Newman and Patty and Greg, and it's been amazing how profitable it's been, how great the work is that you've done. Now, another major change that's happening now is I'm going off the board for the first time in 30 years, and there will no longer be elected officials on the board. And the people that will be on the board will be more environmentally oriented and more focused on what is the mission of Corps. I'm mixed about that in many ways because I thought it gave us a good inside track to funding every year by having elected officials on the board. On the other hand, it put you all sometimes in a dilemma. Francie has also been on the board, and so it's a new day, and we're adjusting, and and we've got a lot of work to do.
Right. Well, one of the other reasons we're going to a citizen board is that citizen boards can raise money, and board members, as they are in
That's
most
also true. That's a
nonprofits,
very practical
is
point
to
that Greg
contribute
has just
to actually
pointed
going
out.
out and finding the funding. And electeds seem inhibited about doing that because it causes
No,
potential
it does.
conflicts.
You were in a difficult position, I think, many times. So I appreciate that dilemma, and thank you for enabling us to have those REMP funds to do what we've been doing for 30 years.
Stop by any time.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for that. It's not a digression. It wasn't even really tangential. That's an integral part of our conversation. I appreciate all of that. So going over the schedule again, if that's where we are, budget, BoC, Core's presentation on the 15th. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Thank you.
I
Thanks,
guess
Bill.
I would request if there's support on the board to direct staff to create some funding solutions for us or help generate ideas for how we might carve out funding to have for our climate change projects rather than relying exclusively on the general fund.
Well, I think we rely a lot on
And-
grants, which we've been very successful with, so we've done well there.
So that's a good, worthwhile analysis. You've given it to us before. Maybe we should just stay apprised of that. And I know we're always looking for grant opportunities. I know I send them to Michael and to you, and you already know about it generally by the time I send it to you. So I know that's happening. But I think that's a good point, Kelly.
I mean, I guess it'll come up in budget if you're,
Right.
you know, we're gonna want to know where money is gonna come from to pay for all of these things, and if it's just from the general fund, then that's fine. If there's a way that we want to be more,
I don't know what you're looking
Thoughtful
for to
about that.
know whether or not I support it.
Well, we're going to have to,
Yeah.
that's to be TBD, right?
She's
We don't
just
know how
looking for
much we can ask for
clarification.
from the general fund, right?
I think we also have to keep in mind the ballot language of the different funds, and if there's ballot language that restricts the use of certain funds for certain purposes, we have to keep that in mind.
John, did you have your hand up? Were you waving at me, or you looked distressed, but I wasn't sure if that's on our account.
Yeah, I think we may need some more clarity around Kelly's request. Part of using the general fund is a little bit of a carve out there, and then we've got a lot of restrictions, and so we can certainly try and come up with ideas. I think right now, what we've been aggressive in is pursuing grants where we can, and we've had some good success there. But a carve out is really an appropriation and a pre-prioritization, and we couldn't do it in a number of our funds. I think that's going to be the challenge, and that's why we rely on general fund. But maybe there's some other ideas, Kelly, that you're thinking of, and we'll just need to get some more clarity around that, I think.
I guess I'm looking for the ideas we haven't thought of.
Right. And I think also just that, I think expressing a commitment to CORE is something I'd like us to do so that they know we're not just pulling the plug. There's a certain level of anxiety about, is CORE going to expect anything from REMP or from the county? And so I think we just need to assuage that, and so we can keep moving. Steve?
Yeah, if you think of our big priority, top priority really is dealing with climate change, because that's our existential threat. Whatever we can do to come up with money from however we can do it, I think is really very important. The REMP funds are coming less and less by design, and we need to come up with other money for the county projects that we're deferring the county projects right now because we don't have the money, but they're still so very important, maybe more important than anything else we can be doing, and that it kind of is frustrating and hurts a little bit to have to defer those projects.
Right, I copy that. Francie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like my role on the core board when they went to the retreats was to warn them warn us.
REMP was going away.
About REMP was going away and that we should change the board so that we could get,
You got your way.
yeah, but
You were influential.
sadly.
Well, we could relax the energy code, collect more rent money, and pay for.
Well, or
I
can
mean, the
you
rent code. I mean,
expand
the
REMP?
energy code is what we wanted to do, knowing it was going to defer money from going into REMP. So we created this ourselves by on top of the fact people were beginning to do the right thing anyway. Now they are required to do the right thing, and so we created this dilemma. But then we have to look at all the other things we don't have money to fund with the county, like housing, senior housing, homeless housing, all of those other things. So, and then if we're gonna be paying for the new bridge for the entrance to Ashland, we gotta be prepared to,
And the new runway. What the
yeah,
hell to pay
oh,
for
I
that, too.
forgot about the airport, yeah.
Kelly, you were going to say, you said you had a comment that maybe we can find alternative ways to do this, and I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I mean, the ideas we haven't thought of,
Well-
or expansion of ramp, or, I don't know.
Different ramps.
And I guess I could also forecast, two efforts. Obviously, the Vision 2050, I think there's definitely some opportunities that we're going to explore, whether or not we can act on them, to the earlier conversation. And then I also think there might be an opportunity as Michael continues to move forward with the climate action plan, seeing kind of what those priorities are for the county, and where there might be investment opportunities or funding opportunities there.
Great, thank you. Good start. Thank you. See, now you're trying to inspire us.
Trying.
What else have we got?
That's it.
Other questions? I think we should wrap that up. Thank you. Thanks for the
Thanks, all.
conversation. This was helpful, and I am encouraged. Okay, so it says we're up for a break.
Jeff,
but
I was
we had
just
one
kidding
before the last one. Are we okay to keep hammering away here?
I'd like to.
I saw him go.
Okay,
They get very
review of
pale.
future agendas. John, is that you?
No, he's frozen.
Thanks, Kara.
Thanks, Greg. Am I frozen?
You may need to turn off your picture. Turn off your
Okay.
video and see if that helps.
Love seeing
That'll
Williams
improve the
Lake,
meeting
but-
that way.
He was at some other place. It looked like it had a burned tree behind him the last time.
That was Roaring Fork River, actually.
Oh.
A section in the Roaring Fork earlier that was on my phone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah,
or am I
that's
still breaking
better.
up?
It's a little bit muddy. I don't know if you can get
Bit
closer to the
muddy.
microphone or not.
I can hear.
Okay. Let's kind of try and put some. For you guys, any better?
There you go. That helped.
Can you hear me better now?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. We picked up more on the high end.
All right. So, as you all know, we are, for future agendas, we are looking to just get some time on the agenda for county attorney recruitment follow-up.
I was hoping this would come.
We still need to see, what the pool of candidates and such looks like, but I do know we've got some dates in October that board members are not going to be available. We're looking to set aside some time for you on September 21st,
No.
October 1st.
September
No.
21st, that's Saturday.
I'm sorry, September 24th. Thank you, Patty. I was conflating my September and October dates. So I'm looking at September 24th, October 1st, and October 21st. And I know some of you had some dates there, I think around October 15th.
Yeah,
I think you weren't going to be around.
correct, I'll be gone.
Um,
That was Francie.
I will offer that, I don't think we have to do an APSHA policy discussion update on the 24th. I think we can delete that hour,
Thank you. I was going to ask about that.
because I'm just gonna give a brief
Already,
update
Okay.
here and board reports in a few minutes, and then,
Yeah, and John, on the 24th, I have ACRA in the morning. And I had mentioned to Rye if he needs executive session, we could put it on in the afternoon. But Kelly's perfect if we could do. And I checked on the applications this morning. We've only had 5 or 6 submitted so far, and closing date is Thursday, is my understanding.
That's for attorney.
for the attorney's office.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some more come in right at the end there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move the 24th around a little bit.
So we can move the 24th around, and then are you okay if we try and find time on the 1st and 21st? I just want to make sure that we're going to have a full board if we're talking about this. We may not need all these times, as Patty said, depending on the number of applicants.
October 1st is great for me. The 21st, I'm still checking.
Okay.
October 1st, the agenda is,
22nd?
yeah, but October 1st, the agenda is pretty much set, except for exec in the morning.
We may use some of that exact time, Patty.
Yeah, and the 21st, we don't have in our agendas yet.
Right. It was more to check and make sure that you all were around, and then we'll move stuff around. As I would imagine, this is a pretty high priority for the board.
So what was the other date? October what?
21st.
We had October 21st, October 1st, and September 24th.
I can do the afternoon of the 21st.
That's a Monday.
It's a Monday?
Yeah.
October 21st is a Monday. John, did you mean
I think
that?
we're
22nd?
I think we're looking for days that we may be able to do interviews, Patty, so we weren't competing for work session time.
Oh, got it. So that would be a Monday.
Yeah, Monday is the most open day for all of us, I think.
Got it. All right.
I'm good on the 21st.
Yeah, I can only really do noon to 2:30.
Will we have opportunity to Zoom to that if we're not here?
We do in person.
Yeah, I would
interviews?
encourage in person if you can.
Right,
for
yeah,
the
no doubt.
candidates. Yeah.
Hang on.
No
I
doubt.
think the in-person, you can see the body language much better, and that will be part of our decision, I'm sure.
Are we gonna have Jeffrey attend those interviews with us?
If we can, I'd like to, yeah.
So John, we need to extend that invitation to Jeffrey.
I am good on the
Absolutely.
21st, all day. So far.
Okay. I'll let you know as soon as I
Okay.
can. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Um,
And then just to let the board know, we are looking to get, and it does look like we're going to be working on a permit potentially for X Games. So if that is the case, we'll be trying to schedule some time to bring that event forward to you guys. Also, towards the end of the month or early October. And I know those agendas are getting jammed, so we will keep you posted on that.
Well, and that, can I say, and that being said, I was a little concerned about the article today that they don't have a permit approved for for X Games. And it's already out there that X Games is happening that weekend in January, and I didn't think we'd seen anything of it.
Well, this is months earlier than we saw last year. It was so late
Yeah,
last year.
so
There's a lot of
gonna get
changes
it-
going on this year.
The impression is
Yeah,
they've
so I
got some
think-
big plans for buttermilk, is what it sounds like to me, for concerts and skiing events. And there's a lot of big plans, and hopefully they'll tell us about them sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so
Expensive
we've
tickets.
had some preliminary meetings at the staff level. There's a lot of detail that still needs to be filled in on the event and any changes at the event. Greg, I think as you indicated, it's looking like there's going to be more concerts and such, and I think there's going to be really two issues that are separate. They're different issues for the board's consideration. One is getting the event permitted from kind of life safety, community impact perspective, and then the other is ongoing support with subsidies for the event, which are two different questions.
Right, yeah, great. Thank you.
That's all I have for future agendas.
Okay, so that's all we are for now. Do we want to go to board reports? Is that where we are?
Okay, I can
Oh.
start.
Future agenda, can we, is there interest in finding time on doing ballot measure resolutions of support?
Good point.
Because I know last year we did them
I'm-
like end of October, or like 2 years ago, they were like late in October. I don't think they're quite as meaningful if, that late in the game.
Thank you so much for remembering that. I think that should be an October 1st thing.
Like first
Before the
meeting.
ballots go out, so that when people are reading the ballots, they see it. Or not. They won't, but some might.
October 9th.
Okay with that?
Should we put that on for October 9th and we'll
We've
flesh
got to
that
make
out?
sure staff has time to write the resos.
I mean, maybe
So,
can we
yeah, I
like
think we
dedicate a
may-
little work session time maybe to reviewing what we might want to support?
On the 8th?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. I think we need some work session time so that the board can provide direction to staff, as we obviously can't make those determinations as staff. So why don't we try and get some work session time, and then you're looking to have resolutions by, I missed the October meeting, I'm sorry.
The 9th?
Which October 9th? Okay.
So is October 1st the right time for that, or is that enough time? Guess it has to be.
I may see if we can do it a little earlier, Greg, just depending on the number of resolutions that the board wants to write, just to make sure staff has time to both write them and get them into the packet based on board direction.
Got it. So we put that on for the 24th? That discussion for the 24th? You froze up on us again. You may have to turn your camera off if you can hear us.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so we'll look for time on the 24th, and we can bring the sample ballot to the table and then get board direction from there.
Great, thank you. All right, so that's it for, thanks for that, Kelly. Board reports. Patty, up first.
ACRA, the afternoon blend is Thursday. So it's, I don't know who else got ticket. Greg and I and John, I think, have tickets. I don't know if anybody else is going. We've noticed it in case anybody wants to. It's a great event.
I will be in Grand Junction.
Oh, are you going to be in Grand Junction too? Okay, well, it's a great event, so see how that goes. Economic development with Northwest COG, I'm very excited. We had a meeting last week. I went over to do it in person. I'm really glad I did. We're starting off a much better year with the Economic Development District, doing topics at our meetings like childcare, housing, traffic. So things that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at economic development, not economic mitigation or economic planning or whatever, but I think it's going to be a very beneficial year for the Economic Development District to have some meaningful meetings and conversation. Same thing with Northwest COG, a lot going on, getting ready for the budget. There's another in-person budget meeting I'm going to try and go over for that. We're going to be looking at changing officers on the executive board. I have told him I'm probably going to step down as vice chair of the Northwest COG executive board, trying to get some new people involved to gear up, and then I'll probably stay on as vice chair for the Economic Development District to see what happens this year. The workforce, that workforce committee no longer exists. Greg, you've been asking about it too, with that the state took that away, so we don't do that anymore. It's kind of handled through the numbers that come through in our economic development when we talk about labor and workforce, et cetera. Intermountain TPR, we're still looking at, the state's looking at using some of the regional TPR funds to do improvements and whatever needs to be done on I-70, which takes money away from our jurisdictions, from the state. So we're trying to encourage the state to look at the federal government for assistance in funding those, since it is an interstate, and it, has a lot to do with interstate commerce. So the TPR with Brian's leadership, Brian Pettit, is looking at how to incentivize, encourage, and support the state into looking for federal dollars to put to use on federal highways within the state of Colorado, instead of taking our local monies away. So that's where we are on those issues.
Thanks, Patty. Francie?
Okay, so I'm going to the River District budget meeting, board meeting, annual meeting on Thursday. Friday is their open annual meeting, and I'll be there for that. And then I'll tell you about that next time we do our reports, probably before that. And I'm going to miss the CCI meetings this week. Will you guys be going?
Yeah.
I
I'm
won't
gonna
be able to.
get to as
You
much
won't
as
be
I
able
can
to
on
either.
Friday.
No. There might be, I might be able to zoom in for like over a lunch break or something at Club 20, but.
A few flag things that we should know about that.
Well, I
Really
think,
get
I mean,
to
I think it's just the legislative,
update on the
yeah,
different steering committees.
presenting all the legislative proposals to the entire steering committees, and then we'll vote on them early October.
Yeah.
So you can always review all them online, and
Okay.
I'll send you the link.
Thank you, that's great.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to print them out and look at them, so I don't know if I received them yet.
Somehow we should try to have somebody present ours.
I hope I
And
can.
maybe
I mean, it's just
one
the
of us or
timing with
Levi.
conflicting meetings. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll check in with Levi and see if he can
Yeah.
do it in our
Levi would be
absence.
good. CAST and Rocky Mountain 2030 or Mountain 2030 are meeting at the same time or back to back in Jackson Hole, so I'll be there for that meeting as well. And I'll bring news back to you from that. West Elk Loop, I haven't heard a thing about them for 2 years, so I don't think. And this doesn't have CPW on it, but I would like us to, I talk to CPW all the time. I spent an hour and a half with Matt Yamashita 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago. And I would like to figure out from CPW why they would ban paddleboarding on Beaver Lake, but then allow it to be drained for augmentation. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever. So that might be a follow-up conversation I have with Matt, just so you know. And I think Kevin's going to come back to Carbondale soon. I hope so. He's been stuck down in Glenwood, Kevin Warner. I know he wants to come back, so we'll see how that goes, whether he gets back before the building's finished or not. The building's huge. How many of you have seen it?
I've seen it.
It's
And I think it
Construction
grows
site,
every
it's
time
big,
I see
yeah.
it. Like
So
the-
sad. It has nothing like the Forest Service buildings in every other town in Colorado. So
It
sad.
looks like a big multi-purpose
Yeah.
medical
Bank.
office complex.
I hope it has cladding that is at least somewhat reminiscent of Forest Service buildings.
Logs.
Yeah, it's lots.
And
or
the trees
fake
they
lots.
cut down in front.
Anyway, that's all I have. It's all out in the future, and I'll bring it all back to you.
Okay, Kelly?
Okay. So let's see, APSHA, we reviewed our work plan for, next year, which I believe will get presented to this board during budget presentations. And a lot of it is related to, the capital repair programs, to doing the capital reserve study, and updating our strategic plan, which gets updated every 5 years. And so I think it would be great to have a check-in related to the strategic plan prior to the retreat in 2025, to do that. I just want to share, APSHA is taking its responsibilities seriously, and we had recently endeavored into a third-party audit related to how one of our compliance cases was handled, and complaints relative to someone who had rented out rooms without getting approval and charging too much rent and all that kind of stuff. And so I just wanted to report back, and we will be discussing that in executive session because some of it has to do with staff performance, et cetera, but that we are, taking seriously those responsibilities about how we equitably apply all the rules.
Is that tomorrow?
No, because, because we won't have a quorum.
Great.
CCI, so I will do my best to plug in on Friday to the steering committee meetings. Again, those steering committees are just looking at the policy statement edits and for each committee, and then the legislative proposals relevant to each committee. We have the 2 proposed for RET and SAF fuel incentive. And that is that. I will report I learned that Ginny Pingino is now the open space director in Arapahoe County.
Oh, great. Good for her.
I'm interested in that. She's been collaborating with Gary
It's a
on
nice
a variety
change
of
for her.
things.
That's great.
And Eric Bergman is going to be in town next week, I think, doing some DOLA meetings. And he said they have some grant review hearings up
Did
here.
he go to DOLA?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the Division of Local Government Director. So I'm going to try and connect with him. CCAT, CCAT is busy doing their kind of legislative planning for next session. We also had issued an RFP to hire a new lobbyist. And so solidifying the contract with a new lobby firm to represent us in the coming legislative session. The Colorado River Basin Roundtable meets on Monday. I have not seen the agenda for that yet. It hasn't come out. I will say the project that we supported via Healthy Rivers and Streams for the flood mitigation at the 3 Mile Mobile Home Park in Glenwood is on the agenda to request the roundtable support for funding that project as well. And then CJCC, we are going to be meeting October 10th or 20th. It won't be the 20th. That's a Sunday, the 10th. And the sheriff's office had procured an architect to design a set of plans around several different options for CJCC members to review.
Yes, I had my meeting with Michael.
Okay. So
They're not going to come to us anytime soon in a public meeting with that.
not that I'm aware of. I have to say we had not met in a while because we needed honestly the sheriff to sort of hone in on how he wanted the direction of all this conversation to go, and so this will be the first time that we're actually meeting as a group in a while.
Got it. Okay.
And then RWAPA's been tough for me to get to, but I think Greg has covered some of that.
I attended the last one online, but I don't have anything to report on RWAPA presently.
Okay. That's all my report.
Thank you. Steve?
Okay, let's see. CC4CA always seems to have meetings when we are having other meetings, and I cannot attend.
It's hard.
It's been frustrating. I've barely participated in anything besides reading all the emails as far as I've gotten there. The Regional Transportation Coordinating Council, we had our Transportation Summit last week in Frisco. We had 40 attendees there. We had a goal of having 40 to 50, so we reached that goal. It was really, really good presentations and good discussions all around. Everybody was really thrilled to be there. We had a couple of the things that stick out in my head was CDOT officials talking about the Mustang and the expansion of Mustang. Pretty soon there will be Mustang, I think it's eight a day going through
Jeez.
Glenwood Springs.
No kidding.
Mustangs,
Yeah,
wow.
it's 5 right
Wow.
now, 5 a day going through Glenwood Springs. The Outrider ones, or the Pegasus they call it, it goes to different parts of the state, is really expanding a lot. And Mustang's actually helping to fill a lot of the gaps between between Frisco and Vail. Vale passes there. Well, Mustang goes through there, but none of the local bus systems go through there.
Especially with 8 a day, gosh.
We had a really good presentation on the Mountain to Rail project, the effort to get the train going, passenger train going back to Craig, which it used to. And then the passenger use had dropped off and they started putting a whole bunch of coal trains on there. And so that for years of really the only extra train going besides Amtrak was the ski train going to Winter Park. But they're sort of envisioning this train being a continuation of that. It would go to Winter Park, then it goes down by Bond by the Colorado River and then heads up towards Oak Creek and Steamboat. So it would be a ski train to Steamboat and then continue on to Craig.
Is the train to Winter Park well used?
I think it's pretty well used. It's popular in Denver.
I think so too.
Yeah. The Mustang ridership is just like off the charts.
That's so great.
They really don't have any problem hiring drivers, which that was a lot of the question. Like,
Interesting.
you know, do you have enough drivers? And they indicated that they have really loyal drivers.
Do skiers use it? Do skiers use it?
You know, when I have
definitely,
ridden,
yeah.
I haven't seen people putting skis on like underneath it.
Can I ask one more question?
But I suppose they do sometimes.
And do they have a bunch of stops along the way, or is it just like a few major stops? Like, do
Well-
they stop at Frisco and Dillon and
Well, like from
Vale,
Glenwood,
Eagle?
they stop in Eagle, then they go to Avon, Vale, Frisco,
Idaho Springs?
Idaho Springs, and then out at the Federal Center area in West Denver, and then Union Station. So they don't stop every place, but
It's not quite a local, but it's,
yeah, not quite a local
BRT.
thing. But, so at the RTCC, I'm the chair of that board, and I've been like putting it out there, which you guys got the letter that I had sent on that, but they really need to get another elected official, either a town council person or a county commissioner. And actually, the bylaws call for 2 elected officials to be on that board.
what is it again?
Well, what it used to be only had to do with the NEMT transportation of, it's like Medicare and disabled veterans to their medical appointments was kind of the whole purpose. Well, all of that function was taken over by, more coordinated by the state, so we didn't really have a purpose. But the committee is like really reinventing itself and coming up with different things to work on, like 5 main different areas to work on, including just improving communication, improving education, working towards filling in the gaps in the transportation systems. For instance, even in the Roaring Fork Valley, the senior vans have their own they're siloed. So the senior van will only go as far as Aspen Village going down valley. The Eagle County one only goes in a little area. The Garfield Traveler won't leave Garfield County to go into Pitkin or Eagle at all. So there are these little silos with gaps in between. It's those kind of gaps. And then a lot of work on developing first and last mile mobility solutions for all, not just for old people or disabled people, but for all the citizens. So there's a lot of emphasis on better sidewalks, safer walking, better lit bus stops, so you know they're safer, more inviting for people. Developing micro-transit systems to pick people up at their door and take them to their destination when they're not able to they're not mobile enough to get themselves there. Those sorts of solutions.
Okay.
So, that's the RTCC. Then Vintage, same deal. I'm the chairman of the Vintage Board, which is these are both parts of Northwest COG. Both the RTCC and the Vintage are parts of Northwest COG. So I will be, when I'm term limited, I can't be on, the only way I could serve on the Vintage Board would be to get onto our senior council and then be appointed by the senior council to go. So it might be in a couple of years, I might be able to be back on the Vintage Board, but so we're kind of soliciting more elected officials. So I am filling the slot on the Vintage Board as the elected official, which they need to have a city council person or a county commissioner be on that board.
I'm sure Bill Guth would be up for it.
So looking for not necessarily someone from Pitkin County, but I mean, there are 7 counties in the region that get people to serve on those boards is important. And both of them have quarterly meetings, and 2 of them virtual during the winter time when travel can be more iffy, and then 2 of them hybrid meetings during when the travel is better. Now, I don't know about driving to Granby tomorrow. I might have to do an alternative route if Glenwood Canyon is still closed, but we'll see.
Well, also, John sings tomorrow.
Afternoon, right.
Let's see. Club 20, this Friday and Saturday Friday's actually the business part of that. Saturday, in an election year, they do all of the speeches by all the people running for state legislature and for the U.S. congressional positions. So there will be a whole lot of speeches, and I'm going to attend all of that, but it's more to do the networking and meeting, being there and talking with people is really important. And I am our board's representative on Club 20 next year. Well, this fall sometime. I was talking to Francie about that.
I did talk to them when I went to the meeting in Nucla, and so they've got me down to be on the agriculture thing, but I just can't go on Saturday because I have baby chicks arriving, and my sister and her husband are leaving for 2 weeks of vacation. So after being gone for 2 days, I have to go take care of my baby chicks. I know it sounds ridiculous.
I'm getting good at that, Francie. I've been babysitting chicks
anyhow,
every weekend. I can come
Francie
over.
pretty much, there will be a meetings in
Francie's house
Aspen
is nice.
sometime this fall.
Her house is
I
great.
don't know the date. I'll know on Friday when the date is for when they're coming up to Pitkin County. When, we might only have, if we can get 3 people, because we can have 3 people listed as board members. So I'm planning on being just a personal membership in Club 20 and being one of the 3 people.
Well, when you talk to them this weekend on Friday, just tell them to start, including me and stuff. And I do get stuff from them pretty regularly, but
Yeah.
anything extra that, I'm happy to take over Club 20.
Yeah, so Club 20 has been, it's been tough there because there's so many really far right climate change denier type people in Club 20.
Mm-hmm. And also the committees I serve
Francie
on,
can take 'em.
CCI, just like the CCI.
It's
committees
like
that I'm on.
getting it from both sides of the state.
Yeah.
But it's been really important when Rachel and I were just there, speaking up about things and slowly getting little sentences or things changed in the policy.
Mm-hmm.
The policy is a lot better than it was when I started going
Well,
to Club
at the
20.
last meeting, you know, they were just
quick.
fretting about how much agricultural land is lost all the time.
Mhm.
So I talked to them about conserving agricultural lands. It was when Bob Sakata was there. Do you know him? God, he's fantastic. And I got his book about his dad and stuff. But anyway, I talked to him about that. I talked to the whole group about, we know everybody doesn't get the kinds of open space kinds of money that we get, but it is one way and a really important way to conserve agricultural land. So they'll hear my voice.
Great. Okay, Steve, is that it?
Let's see. Well,
I've got to get
same-
Kelly out the door, that's all.
Same thing, the opioid settlement committee, I will be transitioning off of that. There really have only been, out of the 6 counties in our region, there's only been a couple of county commissioners, me being one, involved in that. But we have staff people who are like plugged in regularly on that, but
Isn't it
there would
almost
be
over?
a possibility if one of you or Jeffrey is interested in participating in that, just to have a elected official representative there, and it's down more to the nitty-gritty of applying, dispersing the money to these different projects. So Maggie Sundin has her High Mountain, what is it called? High Mountain Substance Abuse.
Yeah, she's awesome.
That she goes all the way from Leadville to Aspen to Glenwood, different places in a van, and sets up shop to help educate people who are addicted to distribute Noxalone and different things like that. So it's been, I think we've accomplished a lot, but it has to do with dispersing the money the settlement money that came from the big drug companies and whatnot who caused the whole opioid crisis in the first place.
Right.
So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we just heard a lot about CORE. I'm going to briefly just talk about what's happened in the last week or month. Coal Basin has an application submitted to the Forest Service for the next phase of Coal Basin. You can go online and look at the Coal Basin Methane Project in Aspen Corps' website for details. Corps has submitted scopes of work to Snowmass Village, Eagle County, Town of Basalt, and they're all asking for increases in the services Corps is providing. They're asking for increases in the scope of work for various projects on their re-energized programs and decarbonization planning and implementation. So the Corps is deeply engaged with Eagle County, Snowmass Village, and Basalt, like they are with us and with the city of Aspen. They've been doing listen and learn sessions with local designers, contractors, developers on regional code alignment, green workforce, multifamily housing, and the regional building performance hub. So Corps is doing that legwork, which I think we alluded to earlier, about how are we going to introduce our community to these things we're working on. That's it. The development committee, which I sit, is interesting. Really, 3 of us, Bill Sterling, I, and John Doyle, are kind of like the prime board members who are actually doing the development. And we work with their development director, grant writers, and staff to try to figure out how do we get more people involved in CORE. They had a very successful event last month. It was the Bill Sterling honor event with the creation of the Sterling Giving Society, as it's called, and they had about 200 people attend, and it was quite a good bash. The next one will be in December, and that'll be honoring Randy Udall as part of CORE's 25th, 30th, 25th. I should know this. Okay, we talked about REMP already. QQ, I had a call with the QQ outgoing chair is Kathy Chandler Henry, who has nominated me to become the chair of QQ. either I will be chair or vice chair, most likely, sharing that with the new board member from Grand County. Board of Health, we're plugging along. No news to report there. I can think of RAFTA, as you may have all heard, the bus drivers union has filed a request to strike. They wouldn't have the ability to strike until January, and so RAFTA has been in negotiations with them. And it's generally regarding management, some management issues, and pay increases. I can say that RAFTA probably, I think, pays more than almost any bus agency anywhere, but still the high cost of living here makes it hard for drivers. So
I
we're,
think in fact we do pay the most.
yeah. So that is ongoing. We can't talk much about that other than that I think everyone's acting in good faith. We had the outgoing goodbye to Dan Blankenship at the last meeting, and we all got to say a few nice things about Dan, including that, and I invited the head of the union to come up and say a few words too. He spoke so fondly of Dan. I thought that was a good thing. So there's that. Rawapa, I can't think of what to tell you, anything right now about Rawapa. Only because I've just blanked it out. But I don't think there's anything particularly important. I did want to highlight October 17th, Wednesday. We've got an invite from Lanny Kitching about the State Wildlife Council meeting. Will be in Carbondale at 3rd Street Center, and they wanted to invite us. I think you have letters in your mailbox from I think it's from Lanny, or for the name of her company. She's on our Rawapa board and was on the town council in Basalt, or still is. But the email came, I think, from her company, so it may be off-putting. Look for a fly fishing company invite to this State Wildlife Council meeting, which will be in Carbondale on October 17th. That's what I've got for you. Yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
So,
Open
quick
discussion?
question about the RAFTA bus driver strike.
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with Dan Blankenship retiring and not being there anymore? Or
You know,
did he have, they worked so well with him, I think, but maybe now with, new leadership, does that have anything to do with it or not?
I would say
think so.
people would say it doesn't, but I can't help but feel the same way, that perhaps there's some concern. I know there was some real concern because Dan was so good at getting along with everybody.
Yeah.
But not to say that about the current CEO, Kurt, and staff are top notch, and I have complete confidence in them. And they're, I'd say, as easy to get along with. They don't have the institutional knowledge that Dan had. And they're pros, they're total pros. So I hope not, but I had the same
Wondering
concern.
the same thing?
Yeah.
But Kurt's been there for 8 years, so it's not like
Yeah,
it's new.
Kurt's
you
been
know.
there a long time.
And I believe that we were told, anyway, the board was told that the staff seems happy with the transition.
Right, it seems like that's gone well.
But not, it's
And
only
no
like
big
30% of our
Yeah.
staff are union members, right?
Right, yeah, so they're, and also the national unions have been, have an initiative right now to make a big push, so I think they're getting a lot of input from the national union, and so
Let's see.
we'll see how that shakes
I have
out.
one more little report if I could.
Go ahead.
I went to the opening of the Stotts Mill, the daycare center down
Oh, you
there.
did, I saw the
Oh, great.
picture, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, it was really good. I was there to have one Picken County
That's so
commissioner
nice of you.
there. There were, the town of Basalt had a couple of elected people there, but it's really nice. They did a really good job on the inside of the facility, and they're probably, I think, yesterday, they're probably wide open and running full bore now. It was like September 16th was the date, move-in date for all of the little kids.
Really, wow.
So that's
That was
really
quick.
a good addition to
Oh,
the county, and they were really just so thankful for the Picken County's participation in the funding of
Good.
that.
We saw it when they didn't have walls up. It had studs, so, yeah, it happened quickly.
Steel studs.
Any other open discussion?
I have a question. And it's about the letters we've been getting from that individual about his voting
Right,
thing
yeah.
and stuff. Do we need to
Yes.
do anything about that?
We, at this point, I did make an inquiry. I talked to Michael Buglioni. I talked to John.
Maybe we didn't all get it. I think maybe sent it
Right,
to a
some of
couple
us got it. That's being
had 'em
handled.
come
There's
and go.
actually there's a team, Human Services, law enforcement, and staff are on it.
Working on it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So-
there's a little more going on than
Yeah,
just.
oh, I
there's-
figured.
there's a lot
That's
more
why
going
I
on,
didn't want
right.
to say a name or anything.
So that's being handled. I can't think of anything else for y'all. Thank
Does
you.
John have open discussion?
Oh,
I don't have any open discussion.
thanks for
you
asking.
today.
John, I forgot you were there.
Yeah.
I would say bears
No,
everywhere.
that's okay.
If
I,
anyone
I don't
wants
have any
to
open
write
discussion
a little
for you
note for
today.
John Ely, I'm taking the book home in about an hour.
Got it. Yeah, I've done
By
it. Did
hand?
it.
Okay, yes.
I can't get on my computer right now.
Yeah, it's upstairs. You can
Handwritten.
write by hand.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
come.
it's
Okay,
sitting
thanks,
outside.
John. I think
Okay,
that's
thanks.
it. We're done for open discussion.
I
I'm
gotta
gonna
run.
adjourn
I'm
us
gonna go open
2
it.
minutes
Thank you,
before
Cal, for the
we're
help.
supposed to adjourn. Should we sit around and wait?
No.
Okay. All right, we're done. Thanks.
Patty, guess what I
Thank you all.
have in my car?
Okay.
Patty.
We got it.
Yeah.